Welcome to the Carnegie Town Hall. The meeting will begin in 1 minute.
Sing, but probably should. I was going to sing a song. I know my phone's gone out.
Well, a hearty good evening to everybody. Welcome to a City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, April 2nd. And we're very, very pleased to have everybody here. We've got a lot of work to do tonight. Let's get this meeting started, and we'll start with a roll call of your City Council.
Council members Aguilar. Here. Anderson.
Here.
Entenmann.
Here.
Erpenbach. Here. Jameson.
Here.
Karski.
Here.
Rolfing.
Here.
Staggers.
Present.
Thank you very much. As we do with every City Council meeting in the City of Sioux Falls, we start with an invocation. Leading us tonight in prayer is Reed DeVries with the Adult Ministry Team Leader for Celebrate Church here in Sioux Falls. Thanks for being here again with us. We appreciate it. What we'd ask is that everybody stand. Reed will give us our invocation, and then if you'll remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance, we'd certainly appreciate it.
Well, our gracious Heavenly Father, we come with hearts full of gratitude for so many things. It says that every good and perfect gift is from you, and so we are grateful for all the gifts that you give us. A gorgeous day for this past weekend and the remembrance of the gift of your Son, the freedom that we have to be in a country, to pursue goals and dreams, and to talk and to freely communicate as a city together. Lord, we pray for wisdom tonight for everybody that's involved in making decisions, wisdom that not only deals with the things at hand, but also as we look to the future. We thank you for our elected officials. We pray favor over them in all aspects, and also all the people who govern every aspect of our city. We're grateful for all these things and ask your blessing upon it all. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great way to start our meeting. We'll continue with the consent agenda. Council, any changes to tonight's consent agenda?
Move approval, Erpenbach.
Second, Anderson.
Councilor Erpenbach's made a motion to approve our consent agenda, seconded by Councilor Anderson Jr. If there is no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson.
Yes.
Entenmann.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jameson.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Thank you. That has passed 8-0. Now moving on to our regular agenda. Council, any changes or motions?
Move to approve.
Second, Karski.
It's been a motion approved by Councilor Erpenbach, seconded by Councilor Karski. Any discussion?
I have a, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Erpenbach?
I need to make a motion to amend the main motion to move agenda item 28 before agenda item 27, and at the same time moving agenda item 36 before agenda item 32.
Second, Rolfing.
There's been a motion to change the order of our meeting tonight by Councilor Erpenbach, and it was seconded by Councilor Rolfing. Any discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson.
Yes.
Entenmann.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jameson.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Thank you. That has passed 8-0. Any further changes, Council? If not, we do have an amended agenda. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson.
Yes.
Entenmann.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jameson.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Thank you. That has passed 8-0. Again, a hearty welcome to all of you. What a great crowd that wants to be engaged in our government. We love it. This is an opportunity for you to engage the council. If there is an agenda item later on that you want to speak to, we'd ask you to wait until that agenda item. But if there's another topic that you want to talk about, please come forward. Just introduce yourself to the people of our town, and we'd ask you to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Anybody interested? Well, very good. Thank you.
Mayor?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Tim.
Welcome, Mr. Stengett.
How are we doing tonight?
Good, thank you.
Was at the 4 o'clock meeting. I was impressed at the numbers, Mayor. On the snow gates, they came way below what was said a couple of years ago, which I think a lot of the city council was impressed too, because it did tell the right thing.
Mr. Stengett, is your microphone on, do you know?
Red light.
Mike, could you help?
As far as I know.
It is. There you go, good. We just want everybody to hear you.
Okay. But when I talked to you after the meeting, and you said that it didn't have to go as far as it did. Sometimes it comes down to trusting. It isn't just a city government, it's every government. And that's what I think we got to try to work on, is for people to trust the government to make it go through the stages that it did. And the outcome came out what everybody wanted. My other issue is, and again, I'm going to hit the trimming trees. I think that the numbers are sort of fudged on that a little bit too. I wish that we could relook at trimming the trees in Sioux Falls. It's just something that I think that the city should do for the citizens of Sioux Falls. $720,000 is really stretching it. Just like the snow gates, when they first came out and said the snow gates was going to be phenomenal, and everybody jumped and said, no way, I can't vote for that. I just think that we've really went a little bit far on trimming trees too, so I'm hoping that we could relook at that issue, and appreciate it.
Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? Very good. Let's move to item number 28.
All right. Item 28 is transfer of a 2012-2013 retail malt beverage license from Stagg LLC Grand Casino, 4211 West 12th Street, to Isava Inc., Sneaky's Chicken, 4211 West 12th Street, full-service restaurant, conditional use permit not required.
Good evening, Jamie Palmer with licensing. Item 28 is a simple transfer of ownership. The business, how it's operating right now, will not change. It's just the transfer of ownership.
Thank you, Jamie. Council, any comments on this item?
Move for approval, Anderson.
Second, Entenmann.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made a motion to approve this item, seconded by Councilor Entenmann. If there is no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson.
Yes.
Entenmann.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jamison.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 8-0. Item 27.
This is a conditional use permit appeal, 2013-0201, southwest corner of West 26th Street and South Mary Beth Avenue, lots 2 and 3, Block 7, Westridge 2 Addition, Minnehaha County. The conditional use permit in the RS2 residential district was to allow construction of twin homes on the subject property, approved at the March 6, 2013 Planning Commission meeting with a vote of 5 yeses, 0 noes, sponsored by Mayor and Planning and Building Services.
Mike,
Good
welcome.
evening. Good evening. Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services. Just a quick overview of the background. This is a conditional use permit that is being requested for 2 twin home lots to be developed for a total of 4 dwelling units. This is located on West 26th Street, west of Marion Road. And the surrounding land uses include single-family residential to the south. We have issued a twin home permit to the east of this property. To the west and north is still vacant. And this is an example of, under the old zoning district that we have now changed, that when you had property zoned RS2, you could either develop it as single family or you could request a conditional use for twin homes. In this case, the property owner or developer, Brady Hyde with Empire Homes, is asking permission to put up 2 twin homes to the west, which would have double garages for each unit. And we did have quite a bit of testimony at the Planning Commission hearing with concerns about the transition from single family to twin home in this area. And so tonight you'll hear an appeal from some of the neighboring property owners with some of their concerns with this petition. And I understand that there's also potential amendment that might be considered by the city council. So tonight you can approve the conditional use, you can deny it, or you can amend the request.
Mike, thank you. Are there any folks here who wanted to speak to on this item to the council? Please come forward. Thank you.
Hi. Greg Neinzert, 2024 South Shaw Avenue. Thanks, Greg. I'm here to speak about the concerns on behalf of a number of the neighbors. This is the current zoning that we have right now. If you'll notice, there is that twin home that's just getting finished up on the very east side, and these are the two that are in play. If you look at the plat, next to the two that are in play, we have 5 vacant lots, which we have concerns about whether they're going to change in the future, and there's 2 single families far over on the west side. It's just an aerial view. This is the existing twin home that's getting finished, and the one thing I want you to notice is that there's a 30-foot side yard over on the west side, and there's only a 5-foot side yard required. That puts a big buffer between it and what would be the next single-family home if they were to do that. This is a scenario if we did single-family homes, which would obviously be our preference. You would have a 30-foot buffer between that first twin home and then the next single-family homes, and you'd only have 4 total residences on the block with less density. This is what the builder's proposing. We're going to move the lot lines over. We're going to lose that 30-foot buffer between what would be Lot 3 and Lot 4, and we're going to have more density. Now we're going to have 6 residences on one block. The justification for doing this is that these lots are on an arterial, which, yes, it is a problem, but many single-family homes are built on arterials. Are they a harder sell? Yes. Is it impossible? No. The concern is if this justifies these, then what about all of the rest of the lots down the block? And I would also point out that these double frontage lots actually are 20 feet deeper than the typical residential lot, so they have a natural buffer to the arterial that other lots wouldn't. Our concerns, the first is parking. This is a 60-foot right-of-way. Wiseman Street, it's a local street. It's not a collector, which is an 80-foot right-of-way. So it's a little narrower. And this is the only access we have out for 2+ blocks on Shaw and Haraldson. And there's a concern about on-street parking being increased. There just typically is with twin homes and then children in the neighborhood. This is just a look at Wiseman Street, the street we're talking about. The existing twin home is on the right-hand side, and the next 2 would go just to the west of it on the right side there. Density. Now we're talking about having 6 residences, which is 3 twin homes on one block instead of 4, so now we're cranking up the density. And we're going to have multiple twin homes across the street from single-family homes. There's a concern about rentals. The one on the corner apparently is going to be rented. The next 2 apparently are going to be sold, although you can't stop anybody from renting them later. And renters can be a problem. I'm not impugning all renters, but they can be versus homeowners. There's a concern that it's harder to sell single family that has twin homes adjacent to it. For example, I was looking at homes a few months ago, and I just wouldn't buy them just because there's just typically issues with that. The rules being changed. People bought and they built assuming that there would be single family homes. Their realtors or builders told them there would be single family, and now it's changing. This is exactly why we have shaped places, because of this issue. People feel bait and switch. They feel like they were lied to. I don't think they were lied to, but yeah, that's just how they feel. These are the adjacent properties, nice single family homes. This is what the twin homes would go next to. The biggest concern, or just as big of a concern, is the rest of the block. What's going to happen at the rest of the block? Is this really the end? We have a promise that there'll be single family down the block, but there's no way to stop that. You can't take away a property right to ask to be rezoned. So, our proposed remedies. The first is you could consider denying the conditional use permit entirely. The second, we could approve 1 twin home on Lot 2 with the conditions and requests I'll list below, instead of 2 twin homes, so we get a little bit less density, so we kind of meet in the middle. And the third is that you would approve this, but we would have 1 condition and 1 request. The condition is that we'd like you to stipulate that there'll be 2 stall garages on each unit to mitigate the parking concerns. Now, the builder promised that, but by the zoning code, if he does 3 bedrooms, it only requires 1 garage. I don't think he's going to do it, but let's just put it in writing. Let's just clean that up. And the other thing we'd like is we'd like the builder to commit to you that he will do single-family homes on the rest of the block. That's not legally binding, we totally understand that, but in 6 months, if he comes back to rezone it, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to ask you what has changed. And with that, I thank you for your time.
Greg, very good job. Good homework. Appreciate it. Anybody else want to speak on this item? Yes, sir, come forward. Just state your name, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jeff Grundy. I live at 1900 South Haraldson. I did go around and talk with people in the neighborhood, and I brought this to the commission meeting last time, and this is just a list of many of the homeowners that are very concerned with what the developer wants to do. I used to live on Mary Beth across from, and granted, these are townhomes, these aren't what Brady's doing. We moved away from that to get away from that density, that traffic, so that, you know, we don't, you know, I mean, we would have people pulling in our driveway, turning around constantly, using our driveway, you know, parking in front of our house, which I know that's fine, you know, it's a public street, anyone can park there. I do understand that, but we thought when we moved into onto 1900 South Haraldson, that we were told that, you know, these were supposed to be single-family lots, and I understand, you know, with the new permit or the new condition that you guys have kind of maybe hopefully solved that problem. But, you know, I ask that you guys really consider what Greg had just said and building single-family lots there. I know at the commission meeting he had talked about the lot 3 was going to have a basement on it, and lot 2 would be poured on slab. That makes sense to do a twin home on the second one. I would understand why you would do that. But on that third one, why wouldn't you build a single family there? I don't understand that, and put a basement under it. It just, I mean, maybe some clarification there from Brady would help. But, you know, I guess I would like to see them all stay single families, and I know that many people in our neighborhood would too. So thanks for your time.
Jeff, thank you. Folks, anybody else? Mike Cooper, did the builder want to speak to this item? There have been a couple of points raised. I don't know if you'd like to. Welcome. If you just introduce yourself to the people of Sioux Falls, we'd appreciate it.
Brady Hyde with Empire Homes. So I can go ahead and talk on a couple items of topics of concern.
We'd appreciate that.
If I can remember them all. For one, I guess kind of go through, as I recall, the traffic of it. We'll all do double stall garages, so I know that that was something that they request be a condition of the, if this is granted. We're fine with the double stall garages. We fully intend to. We've stated that. Nope, not a problem on our end. But as far as the traffic is concerned, the demographic that tends to buy these twin homes tends to be maybe a married couple in their 60s, one car, or a lot of homes. Like if you do homes here, you probably build a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Therefore, you have at least 2 cars, a lot of times 3 cars. So as far as the traffic is concerned, I'm not sure that is entirely accurate, that adding these twin homes will increase the traffic count. To address the last question regarding as why we would do lot 2 on a slab on grade and lot 3 as a walkout. Anytime you put a foundation under a property, obviously it's more costly. And so what we're looking to do as well is we're doing the twin home on lot 1. We're looking to do another twin home on lot 2, and then transition a price range up that would allow for the basement on lot 3, and then transition us into single family for lot 4 and further down the block. So that is why we would do the basement, more of a cost thing, and a transition from the twin home on lot 2 into the single family on lot 4. A couple other items I'm trying to recall here. As far as one thing that was mentioned, as far as us promising we would never come back in and rezone the remaining 5 lots down the block, I don't own the land, so it's really nothing I can commit to because I'm not the owner of the land, I'm just the petitioner. With that being said, I think the new zoning laws kind of cover that concern now, where the conditional use, there's no longer conditional use allowed. It would take a rezone to rezone those 5 single-family lots into twin homes, so I think that is covered. As far as, you know, I've heard that property values would be affected and they want to keep their property values and such, which I completely understand and respect. With that being said, the building, or the architectural guidelines rather in this neighborhood allow for 1,000 square foot, I believe 1,000 to 1,050 square foot on the main level, which tends to lead you to a price range of 150 to 155,000. Our twin homes on lot 7 will for surely be marketed at 160,000 or above, and lot 2, and then lot 3 would even be above that. So as far as protecting property values, I think we're building above and beyond the architectural guidelines. It is not our intent to come in there and kill property values either. We'd be building on lots 4, 5, 6, and 7 single-family homes, so we have every intent to protect property values as well. With that being said, any questions for me? Anything else I can add, or any topics?
Brady, I'm going to ask you a favor. If you wouldn't mind sitting up near the front, the odds are good you're going to be asked again. But thank you thanks for your comments at this point. Folks, one last opportunity to engage the council. Very good. Thank you. Council, questions, comments? Councilor Staggers.
Yeah, I'm not sure who to ask this question to, but the zoning further west, after you get past the twin homes, what is that zoning right now?
Mike?
That is zoned just for single-family residential. So if they ever wanted to come back for twin homes, they would have to go through the rezoning process.
Okay. Also, I have a question about twin homes themselves. I've walked around the community a lot, and I've seen a lot of twin homes. And some of the twin homes are better than single family. And that's what I can't really understand about this, because there was some arguments given against the twin homes. You could say they were strong or they were weak arguments. But when you talk about the houses themselves, how would you compare? You mentioned already some of the values of these twin homes. You're saying they're comparable or even a little higher?
The neighborhood, as you get on these roads of Haraldson and Shaw, I would say when this neighborhood first opened up, home prices were probably 180 to 210. In today's market, being with what as builders seem the shortage of lots, I feel builders might even be overbuilding the area based out of shortage of lots. So we're getting up in there into that 220 and 230 price range. But with that being said, the single-family homes farthest to the west, they're nice homes, but they are double-stall garages, which obviously is a little lesser in value when you present a double-stall garage. I believe they're a little lesser square footage. And what I come back to on the pricing point, or the pricing concern, is that the architectural guidelines, I believe, are $1,050 a square foot on the main level, which it lends to maybe $150,000 to $155,000 purchase price of a home, maybe $165,000 in today's market. And our twin homes here will be at $159,000 at a minimum, and then on the lot 2 and then the lot 3 will be probably closer to $170,000. So I don't believe that we'll be marketing these that would hurt the sales or the value of the neighborhood. And one other thing, I just remember while I was sitting there, they brought up the point that maybe we just allow for the easternmost lot to be zoned twin home and the western not. And they also brought up the setback issue of the shaded area versus the lot to the far east. We built that first twin home on the corner lot, and it's narrower. I believe the frontage is 115. With the intent of doing what we were doing, we pushed that twin home as close to the corner as we could, the 20-yard side setback. So that is why there's a large setback now, because we had this in mind. It wasn't necessary or anything along those lines. And then also to do just lot 2 as a twin home, it doesn't work dimensionally. We need to actually rezone lot 3 and 2 to get those 2 buildings on there. If we were just to get 1, it doesn't work dimensionally, and so therefore we wouldn't do any. But any other questions for me on the values of the neighborhoods and such?
Hang on, Brady.
All right, I'll sit back.
Thanks, buddy. Councilor Karski.
Thank you. Brady, one more time, I'm sorry. With the size that these lots are, as single family, would you be able to put a twin home on them without this modification?
The lots are 65. I think there's now 6 or 7 lots. They're 65 of frontage, and so obviously you have 5-foot setbacks, leads you to 55-foot home. You could not do a twin home or no twin home plan that I've ever seen where you can get double stalls. If you were to go to a single stall twin home, you probably could get it on 55, but with the double stall, you could not. If your garages are 20, you're at 40 right there, and then with 5-foot setbacks, it crunches you pretty much. So what you'd end up getting, if you got a twin home on one of those 65-foot lots, that may be a drag on the neighborhood because it would not look very appealing.
Okay, thank you. And one more, if I
Please.
could. Mr. Brendy.
Oh.
Good question. We've been talking a lot about home prices, and you mentioned that you're new to the neighborhood. If you don't mind, can you tell us more about your house, when you moved in, what you paid for it?
Yeah, actually, my wife probably knows more about it than I do, the price anyway, so. It's a 1,406 square feet house with a 3-stall garage. I think we paid right at 215, was it? Yeah, it was like 215. I mean, we felt like we built a pretty nice home, and I know Brady, he does good work. I'm not taking anything away from them guys. He's building some nice homes right next to us right now. That's why we'd like to see him go ahead and build his single-family homes over there so that, you know, the integrity of the neighborhood stays there. I think if you build a $160,000 home next to $225,000, regardless, I mean, that's my home. I think if we were to resell, I think that would affect us, you know, I mean, so. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Councilor Jameson.
If Mike Cooper or staff, somebody has a picture of the development area, more of a satellite view that is a wider shot, is there a wider one at all? Okay, can you help point out to where all the current twin homes are? That map is a little old compared to what I've seen on Google Earth.
Yeah, there's one under construction to the east of this application, and then to the south. That's all twin homes along that frontage.
And then further to the south, those are all twin homes as
Yes.
well?
Yep, that's correct. Yeah, on the north side of 26th Street as well.
Okay, thank you.
So Councilor Jameson's question was, where are the existing twin homes? And Mike, what you and the team have pointed out, everything that is circled in the pink or whatever that is a twin home today?
Yes, they're all along Mary Beth Avenue.
Okay.
Yeah, the homes to the west, those two that are somewhat circled to the west of those grayed dirt lots, those are single family, right?
Okay, let's take off. We got too many circles.
Thank you. And folks, we have people on TV watching this as well, so that's why we want to get this right, if you don't mind. Thank you.
North of 26th. There you go. So that's twin homes.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
What I wanted to add is the people who bought and built in that neighborhood saw those twin homes when they bought their homes, and they can see by the lot layout that that corner one on 26th Street was going to be a twin home, and then transition right there to the single-family homes. I think that's what they all perceived and are expecting to have happen. And my concern is the density that's getting increased, and they all saw the twin homes up front. They agreed to build their homes behind it. They knew what was going to happen there, and then it is here now that we're potentially going to change it, and I just can't support that. I think 26th Street dead ends up there. It's going to be quite a quiet road for quite some time, but the bigger focus for me is the impression that the homeowners had when they bought their land and built their homes, as it is right now, and I just don't recommend a change. So I would recommend a denial.
Council, any other comments or motions?
Question.
Councilor Urbanbach?
Question, just a clarification on how we would vote. Mr. Cooper, could you remind us, a yes vote would do what and a no vote would do what?
A yes vote would approve the conditional use permit for 2 twin homes. A no vote would deny, or you could do an amendment.
Good, thank you.
Yes, Councilor Ruffing.
Brett? Tell me again why you want to put the twin home. It'd really be 1 twin home, two houses, right?
It would actually be 2 twin homes, 4 residences.
4 residents,
Yep.
okay. I'll leave it up the way it was, please. You've got 1 there now.
Correct.
And you want to put 2 more in there. It obviously was set up to be single-family homes.
Correct.
the reason for it? You think there's more market for that now? Is it a buffer? Is it easier for you to sell? What's the situation?
It's largely due to the economics of the, excuse me, it's largely due to the economics of the lot. We bought the corner lot for X amount, and then with the combining of the other two single-family lots, you can get your lot prices down to X less. Therefore, yeah, it's really just the economics of the lot. Yep, and so which allows you to offer the product at a price we feel you need to offer it being backed up to 26th Street. We also feel that there's a good chance we'll have to afford fences along that entire back there, or that entire backyard, along with trees. And so to achieve our lot prices we needed to feel comfortable marketing these at a certain price, we have that in our budget. So that's why. It's just the economics.
You know that when you bought the...
Well, I haven't bought them. It's conditioned, to be honest with this purchase is conditioned upon your guys' decision.
Whoever bought them in the first place, though, should have known that. Just like...
Well, yeah, and I think as a developer's point of view, there's a lot bigger developers than I, but as a developer's point of view, I've done a little bit. The new rules versus the old rules, I mean, I think they were abiding by the rules that were afforded to them, and the fact that if it was zoned RS2, a valid conditional use is just that, you know, you can do twin homes with conditions. So I don't think the developer ever had probably intent to sell these in single family until the market didn't allow him to sell them as single family. So I think that is why they're going this route, or open to this route. And if we don't buy them, I'm sure they'll sit there just as they have, because the 26th Street, it's not a popular street for homeowners, you know, to be backed up to that. So, excuse me.
Well, that's one of the reasons those lots are 20 or 30 feet wide or longer, or deep, I should say, too.
And you have to have that rear sidewalk along one of those major road like that. So that's yeah. Yep. Excuse me.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yes, Councilor Jameson.
Just one more point of clarification on the, Mr. Cooper, if I could, or somebody from staff. If I understand it right, that single home that you see to the far west, if I understand it right, there's been the addition of 2 other homes built to the east of that. One other home? So there's...
Yep. There's 2 homes there.
2 homes total. So
one is shown on the aerial
we
photo.
see one. Okay. Yeah, there's no doubt about it that a double frontage lot isn't going to be as worth as much. But that's the opportunity that the neighborhood provides, is for a lot of people to build a home on a lot that isn't maybe overly expensive, but it provides an opportunity. And the other thing to not forget here is that 30-foot buffer that Greg had mentioned, that is already in existence from that current twin home, is perfect between it and a single-family home. If you should change these, you'll eliminate that, and that's not a good transition. So again, I just urge you to deny.
Well, very good. We've had good discussion. I think to at least come up with some resolution on this item, we should have a motion and a second to it, either approve it or deny it.
Move to approve, Erpenbach.
Second, Karski.
There's been a motion to approve by Councilor Erpenbach, and it was seconded by Councilor Karski. Thank you for at least getting the conversation started. Appreciate it. Now, does anyone want to speak to this item? Councilor Karski.
Yes, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to amend the conditional use permit by removing that lot 3 of block 7, and just a little bit of...
Councilor Karski, can I get a second first?
Second, Aguilar.
Councilor Karski's made a motion to amend the conditional use permit by removing lot 3 of block 7, and it was seconded by Councilor Aguilar. Councilor Karski?
The logic behind what I'm doing is I've had conversations with some of the homeowners, and from what I understand, they would be okay with that second twin home to the west of that corner. The other reason would be along with the lines of what Councilor Jameson is saying, the buffer. I mean, you were going from a 30-foot buffer down to a 5-foot if we put 3 twin homes there. The other reason, the density. We would be going from a twin home and 2 single-family homes for a total of 4 residences to 6 residences. This is a compromise, and just urging your support of it.
If there's no... Oh, Councilor Erpenbach.
Question for Councilor Karski, if I could. The builder just said that it doesn't pencil out for him to do only one twin home there, that third twin home is actually part of the way that this becomes profitable for them. Have you talked with the builder about how that works?
Have not talked with the builder, no.
But the neighbors like this plan. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Karski, would you have any interest in hearing what the
I
builder?
would like to hear from the builder, yes.
Freddie, welcome.
The one thing I just want to mention, everyone's addressing that 30-foot setback. We didn't have to put that 30-foot setback there. We only needed 5 originally. We did it with this in mind. So I'm not saying it should or should not be there. We did it with this in mind, so it wasn't forced upon us. It wasn't, I guess, in stone that it had to be the 30-foot. We did it for this reason, and so it's traditionally supposed to be a 5-foot setback. So it's not like it was a 30-foot setback to begin with and we're trying to squeeze them to 5. It's always been 5. We just pushed it over to achieve this. The only thing I see where you're trying to come to on the compromise portion of it. The only thing I'd like to add to that is when we first started this, we were looking at doing the entire block. And we felt that that was unfair because it would add too much. It would take it in front or too far west. The only reason we're trying to do this is to provide transition for ourselves to build out the remaining lots for single family. So that's all I want to add. And as far as just that one lot, it wouldn't be feasible. I guess you can't put our twin home plan on just the lot 2. What may end up happening is if it does go twin home, you might get an unappealing plan to squeeze it on that lot. It won't be us, but I'm saying you may end up with an unappealing twin home plan to squeeze it on that lot. So,
Councilor Karski.
Your original intent with this was to replot all this anyway, so wouldn't you be able to replot the 2 lots, divide it, and put twin homes on there that would make it appealing?
You need the 3 lots of frontage to achieve that layout. If you don't get the 3 lots and combine it, that layout doesn't work for even the second building. It's more just a linear footage thing for the frontage of our. I think I'm answering your question, or I'm hoping I'm answering your question. But as far as the frontage of those lots has to be combined in order to achieve even one more additional twin home. Does that make sense?
Is that because you already started the construction on the corner one? Is that
No,
why?
we pushed that one as furthest to the east as we could.
Okay.
So that one's it's a 20-foot setback, 20-foot side yard setback. So that one's as close to Mary Beth as it possibly can be. So we had this in mind when we started on that one. And so the only way, and again, if we wouldn't have pushed it to 20 feet, we wouldn't be here because the linear footage wouldn't allow so either. So does that make sense as far as the linear footage portion of it? Okay.
It is. And if I could ask Mr. Cooper one question. Mike, if this amendment would pass this way, he would still be able to build a single-family residence there without any CUP, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, he still has that option.
As well as maybe just to, Councilor Karski, I don't want to ask the question for you, but if this amendment passes and he decides to do nothing, that's an option too, right?
That is correct.
Thank you. Well, folks, we do have a motion, and it has been seconded. Actually, this is an amendment to the motion. It has been seconded. Councilor Karski, do you have a comment on the amendment?
Well, I do have a comment.
Councilor Staggers,
yes,
losing it.
I mean, my comment on the amendment is going to be the same as my comment on the final motion. Basically, what this comes down to, in many ways, is a philosophical argument. It's property values or property rights. And this happens all the time with us when we have to deal with these kind of issues. So when we talk about property rights, they're constitutional rights. They're much above property values. So my inclination is that we support property rights tonight on this amendment by voting against it and then voting yes on the regular amendment. I mean, the regular motion.
Councilor Staggers, thank you. Well, yes, Councilor Jameson.
I had a question regarding a comment that the applicant had made regarding the ownership of all of those single-family lots to the west. Are you under ownership or contract?
Under contract. We don't own any of the land or the lots in subject. We own the lot furthest to the east, the corner lot, and then I guess our agreement is for the 1, 2, I think there's 7 single family there as it sits now. Our agreement is for those 7 single family. So when I mentioned that we're trying to transition ourselves into the next lots, That's what I guess I'm referring to, is that we would buy all the lots. Yeah.
And some of the neighbors had mentioned that they just like your word, that they would be single-family. How do you feel, how can you convey that in a confident way to them that that's your, I know you see what you said, but how do you?
That it will, excuse me, that it will be single-family. I mean,
that's their big concern, is this is the creep. Yep. This is the creep of twin homes coming to the west, and they can't stop it. They can't stop it tonight, and they won't be able to stop it later. So how can you help us stop it?
Yep. I guess my understanding of it is, and maybe I'm wrong here, maybe you guys can better answer this, but my understanding is the new zoning implications that took effect now would require those lots to go through a rezone versus a conditional use. And from my understanding, again, RS2, a conditional use is an allowed use with conditions on RS2, where a rezone, the twin home does not have to be a conditional use. So from my understanding, the way it's been explained to me is the voices of the neighborhood would probably outweigh a person like me standing here before you trying to rezone those as twin homes in the future. That's my understanding. I could be wrong with that.
Right. Well, the process would be the rezone would come in front of this body after the Planning Commission. But again, if the applicant's convincing, well, and the neighbors are opposed, the creep continues, and that's the.
And I guess I
you said it. You said enough, sir. I mean, you really have. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Good job. Thank you, Councilor Jameson. Thanks, Brady. We do have an amendment that is on the floor. Roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson,
Yes.
Entenmann,
No.
Erpenbach,
No.
Jameson,
Yes.
Karski,
Yes.
Rolfing,
No.
Staggers,
No.
Aguilar.
No.
That has failed 3-5. We still have a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Karski.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the conditional use permit by adding a stipulation requiring 2 stall garages per unit. I know.
Is there a second?
Second, Anderson.
So a motion to amend the conditional use permit by adding a stipulation requiring 2 stall garages per unit. That was made by Councilor Karski, seconded by Councilor Entenmann. Councilor?
The reason for this, and I know the builder promised it, but if something would happen and he doesn't build it, so if anybody else would pick it up, that it is a requirement of this conditional use permit, just for the neighborhood.
Very good. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson,
No.
Entenmann,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Karski,
Yes.
Rolfing,
Yes.
Staggers,
No.
Aguilar.
Yes.
That is passed 6-2. We now have an amended main motion. Any further changes? Further discussion?
Yes.
Councilor Rolfing.
Just want to make sure, after we've gone through all these yeses and noses and all this kind of thing, of what exactly we're voting on, would you like to make sure for us, Dave?
Mr. Cooper, why don't you come forward on behalf of the people of Sioux Falls and simplify it as much as you can at a 7th grade level, please.
The motion
What
is
are we
to-
voting on?
The motion is to approve 2 twin homes with an amendment requiring double garages.
Okay. Just like to bring it back
Good
to
job.
reality.
A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson,
No.
Entenmann,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Jameson,
No.
Karski,
No.
Rolfing,
No.
Staggers,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
We have a tie vote, I assume.
Yes, thank you.
It's a property rights issue. That's just what I'm coming from. Yeah. It's one of those old concepts.
Yes. Passes 5-4. Item 29.
Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by amending certain provisions of Chapter 90 relating to animals and fowl and Chapter 92 health and sanitation.
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Shauna Goldammer, and I'm your zoning enforcement manager. I also had the unique opportunity to facilitate the discussion regarding urban agriculture within our community. This ordinance that's before you for a second reading tonight has been championed by the City Council and two of your own members, and they asked me to do a brief explanation of what the current ordinances have regarding the keeping of animals, and then also kind of explain to you what the ordinance proposed before you tonight will do for our community. First of all, the current animal ordinances you can find in 3 different chapters of our Code of Ordinances. First, we have animals and fowl. That's where the keeping of animals of ordinance is primarily found. The current language is that you can keep animals and fowl, but not on a scale that is a nuisance. There's also what we call the pet rule, where it's unlawful to keep any more than 4 domestic pets except birds and fish. Now, under today's ordinances, we don't have a definition of what that pet is. There's no designation between differences of fowl, livestock, or any other kind of animals. In our proposal we'll go through tonight, we are proposing to provide some more definition to help clarify for our citizens the keeping of these types of animals. The second chapter that addresses the keeping of animals has to do with nuisances and offensive conditions. Right now, the Code of Ordinances discusses things like manure, breeding places for flies, den animals, and livestock waste. There are some minor changes that we're going to propose tonight regarding the nuisance and offensive conditions ordinances. And finally, the zoning ordinance also has some language currently in the 1993 ordinance that speaks to animals, primarily that we do have an agriculture zoning district that allows agriculture type uses, farms, and we also have in accessory uses definitions under today's ordinance, the keeping and raising of small animals and fowl, but not for a commercial basis and not in a scale that's objectionable to the neighbors. Now, you've heard a couple of times the word scale, and what we hope that this ordinance does for us tonight in our community is help define better what scale means for us. In the ordinance that you have before you as a proposal, you can see in Section 1, we're proposing some new definitions, quite a few new definitions, including a definition of fowl, livestock, pet, and slaughter. Now that means that we are distinguishing that fowl is different than a pet and livestock is different than a pet, and the keeping of those types of animals is proposed to be differentiated in the ordinance. Section 2 is the keeping of animals ordinance revisions. What we are proposing is to allow the keeping of 6 chickens and rabbits, 6 or less, I should say. If you want to have more, you would have to get a license. Also, for other types of fowl, ducks, geese, turkeys, you would be allowed to do those, but with a license. Also, we are proposing under this ordinance and in this section that it would be unlawful to keep livestock within the city unless it's in an agriculture district. And we're also proposing that slaughter is prohibited. Section 3 is for the licensing and clarifies what the licensing criteria would be. That the license, you'd have to get one within 30 days of the passing of this ordinance, or when you are going to have or raise those numbers more than what would be allowed by right. As we explained before, that would be 6. The application would be required to have a written consent of 80% of property owners within 100 feet. Now, at first reading, we did discuss with the council that there may be an amendment to that 80%, and I'll let the council handle that. And the final provision in Section 3 is regarding license, and it's that the license specifies restrictions, limitations, conditions, or prohibitions that are required. The final section has to do with nuisance and offensive conditions chapters of our Code of Ordinances. We are proposing to have provisions in there for feed storage and removal. Turns out that chickens eat just about anything, and you can throw out what you and I may have ordinarily maybe put in the compost pile or in the garbage, so that this language provides that you have to remove those and also store the feed in a tight, rigid container, and also speaks to removal of waste manure and bedding material. And last but not least, you may not realize this, but you've already approved some of the language. Sioux Falls a couple of weeks ago was before you, and you approved it. Within that ordinance, we did provide for language saying how far away from your adjacent neighbors you can have enclosures for fowl, and that those can't be any closer than 25 feet to any dwelling that's on an adjacent lot. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll be right over here if anything comes up.
Thank you very much. This is a second reading, folks, so you have the opportunity to engage the council. Is there anyone who wanted to speak on this item before I turn it over to the City Council? Please come forward, sir. Welcome.
My name is Greg Hunoff, and I'd like to thank you all for your service to the community. It's appreciated. Especially I'd like to thank Councilors Rolfing and Karski, who participated in the Urban Ag Committee. I'd like to speak to the proposed ordinance related to the raising of animals within city limits as drafted by the Urban Ag Task Force and their related proposed amendments. I did attend and participate in the Urban Ag Task Force. First, in regards to Amendment A, I encourage the council members to vote in favor of Amendment A. The problem with the current wording of the ordinance, which would be corrected by the proposed Amendment A, is that the cap on the number of animals at 6 can be granted an exception if 80% of neighbors within 100 feet sign a petition. While my concerns with this are many, it boils down to one simple fact. With needing only 80% of neighbors to sign, this could very realistically lead to a situation where a next-door neighbor could refuse to sign and still be outnumbered by the outlying neighbors who will sign or who may sign simply because the situation may not directly impact them or because they don't want to raise a fuss with a neighbor. Because we live in an urban setting, the burden should not fall to someone who does not want excess animals in their neighborhood. The burden should fall to those who do want the animals to prove that they will not be an issue. So my first choice would be to have 0 exceptions to the number of 6 animals. That would equate to a standard number and simple enforcement. My second choice would be to raise this exception requirement to 100% of the neighbors within 100 feet of property lines. However, in the spirit of compromise, I'm willing to cede that the amendment being offered strikes a compromise between my position and that of the animal owners. In the absence of taking my first 2 recommendations as a compromise, please vote in favor of Amendment A. Secondly, regarding Amendment B, I encourage the City Council members to vote in favor of Amendment B. The issue with the current wording as proposed is that according to City Ordinance 90.015, it is unlawful for any person to have or keep more than 4 domestic pets over the age of 6 months. The reason that this becomes such an important distinction is if rabbits were granted a designation as a pet, rabbit owners under the current pet ordinance could keep their original 4 pets as well as their offspring for up to 6 months. 6 months per batch. So within a 6-month time frame, the amount of rabbits would obviously and quickly spiral out of control and result in an extremely difficult enforcement issue. So with that said, I encourage the council members to please vote in favor of Amendment B as well as in favor of Amendment A. Thank you.
Greg, way to be prepared. Thank you. Is there anybody else who wanted to speak to the council on this item? Sir, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Derek Tontland. I addressed the urban ag on the last session you guys had. I'm a licensed rabbit judge from South Dakota. I am also the former president of the South Dakota Rabbit Breeders. Obviously, the gentleman that was just up here hasn't raised rabbits if he thinks you can pump that many out in that short of a time period out of 4 animals. A show animal is very difficult to produce large numbers. It's not like the old saying, they breed like rabbits. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because I emailed you guys my concerns. Rabbits are odorless as long as they're kept clean. They make no noise whatsoever. And to justify that, I just judged a show in Austin, Minnesota, next to the Yonkers store, 1,200 animals in there. No complaints. The mall's happy to have them in there. You have breeders in this city that have raised rabbits for 20 to 25 years. And I really have an issue with all of a sudden now we're going to get rid of these herds that are a lifetime of blood, that are nationally winning and well-known animals. I don't know how this is any more offensive than somebody's dog barking, than somebody going to work at 5 in the morning firing up a motorcycle, anything like that, when you have animals that make absolutely no noise whatsoever. If they're kept clean, there's not an odor issue. You've got animal control people. If there's a big issue, animal control can go over there. I'd really like to see you amend this to pull rabbits totally out of the urban agriculture and out of pets, just like you did with pigeons. Thank you.
Derek, thank you. Good job. Anybody else who wanted to speak to the... Yes, Greg, welcome.
Greg Neitzer, Sioux Falls. I never thought I would be up here talking about chickens. I'm agnostic on most of this, but there's one subject I guess I wanted to talk about. And first of all, major kudos for publishing the amendments online. We should do that all the time. It's great. I guess my philosophical disagreement comes down to this issue of neighbors voting on your property right. It seems like it makes this totally capricious and random. And by that I mean, I might have a next door neighbor who's completely against chickens, so I can't have 8 chickens, but 3 blocks down, same zoning district, everything is the same. The neighbors don't care. And so my neighbor can have 8 chickens. I have no interest in having chickens, but this is a philosophical issue. It seems like either you should just allow it or don't allow it equally. Just pick a number, 6, 8, whatever, and everybody can have 8, and we don't have neighbors voting on your property rights. The other thing is it puts neighbors in a bad position. My neighbor comes over and asks me, I want to have 8 chickens. And so either I have to allow it or I essentially get to veto it. And then we're going to have bad relations because I wasn't comfortable with them having chickens. If someone creates a nuisance, make them correct it. Let's just do it on a nuisance basis. Some people might have 2 chickens that create problems, and some people might be able to have 14 that create problems. I have no idea. Let's just pick a number. And if you feel that a use is so offensive that it requires 100% neighbor approval, maybe it just shouldn't even be allowed if it's that much of a problem. And I don't have a clue, but it's something to think about. And I guess the last thing would be, let's start thinking about other property rights and zoning issues and uses. Should we have votes on, for example, my neighbor gets to vote whether I can let my weeds grow in my lawn. Gets to vote whether I can have 14-inch grass, you know, and not mow. Can I paint my house pink, for example? Can I park my car on my lawn? Can I park my RV in my driveway all year long? So I guess it's just a philosophical thing. I don't think I'm going to win the day here, but I thought I'd point out just another perspective. Thanks.
Good job, Greg. Thank you. Ma'am, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Ruby Rezak, and I am also an ARBA judge. I am the current vice president of the South Dakota Rabbit Breeders and also the current treasury of East River Rabbit Breeders, which is a local club right here in Sioux Falls. And what my big concern is what this is doing to our club members. We are not a big club. We are relatively small, and yet we are one of the largest clubs in Sioux Falls. But 1/3 of our members do reside within the city limits of Sioux Falls. And I kind of want to bring to your attention, and maybe you're not aware of what our club does for your community. We are very active with your children. We are very active with 4-H kids. We do a lot of things with the Sioux Empire Farm Show. We do things with Turner County's fair, and we also do things with the Sioux Falls Fair. A lot of our members judge these county shows throughout South Dakota. We are active in participation with the children and the youth of our community. And this is something that we strongly believe in. We don't want to see kids being limited in 4-H. Urban ag is a way of the future for children. It is a way for them to experience raising animals and animal husbandry. I would much rather see my kids and my grandchildren participating in a 4-H program than having not doing anything or being involved with animals. I think anybody who's ever been raised on a farm realizes the positive impact animals have in our lives. They are not something negative. They're not something horrible that we shouldn't have in our community. And I think we're doing a disservice by telling kids that you can't have these animals in your community. They're a small urban project, and it's a wonderful project for kids to have. They can learn about raising animals, what it takes to be responsible and to care for an animal. Now, and like I said, our club, we've gotten many, many thank yous over the years from 4-H kids who are very appreciative of our club support. We give these kids, we judge their shows, we sponsor their awards, and I also have gotten thank yous from the Sioux Falls Chamber for our farm show participation on the show that we put on during the farm show. And in fact, this year, I would like you to realize that our club brought in 159 exhibitors to Sioux Falls from 5 states. These exhibitors bring in dollars. It may seem like a small number, but the amount of exhibitors, they're here in town, they're shopping, they're eating, they're staying at hotels. They've come in from a very large area to come to this show. And we're, like I said, we're a small club, so we need to have our members active, and they need to be able to continue their hobby within the Sioux Falls city limits. We get, you know, and like Derek talked about the show rabbits and stuff, as an exhibitor and a raiser raising rabbits and stuff, these rabbits are kept in buildings on our properties. The buildings are usually climate controlled. Most exhibitors have a climate controlled building. They're heated in the wintertime and air conditioned in the summertime. What you can't see, if you can't see that rabbit, how is it a nuisance? If you can't hear that rabbit because it is mute, how is it a nuisance? If it's in a confined building, I tell you what, you are going to keep that building clean because ammonia can build up rather quickly. So you are definitely going to keep that building clean. You're not going to let ammonia build up in an enclosed building because it doesn't take very long, and you're going to have animals that are going to have colds. So you're not going to have a dirty building. And I guarantee you that there isn't any rabbit raiser that's got a bunch of manure sitting in his yard. But I tell you what, anybody with a dog has more dog poop in his yard than I've got rabbit manure in my yard. I clean it up, it gets put into a garbage can, and it gets hauled away. As with all, and I don't know that there's anybody in the Sioux Falls city limits that has and shows rabbits that doesn't do it that way. So I don't think there's any basis for the complaint of there being noise, a nuisance, or a smell. So what I'd like to see is that the city take into consideration of removing rabbits from the pet, and also, you know, to have 100% of what other vote do you have that it takes 100% participation of everybody to be in agreement? What is wrong with the majority? Because if it doesn't offend the majority, and like you said, you can have one neighbor who does not like you for whatever reason and decide, I'm not going to let you have what you want, and then you have a war. You've got some petty wars that are going on between neighbors. So if you do 100%, you're going to definitely encourage that type of pitting against neighbors. So, but you know, for a lot of reasons, like I said, we do a lot of good in the community, and I want that possibility for my grandchildren to be able to have rabbits and not be hindered by an ordinance that says you cannot have rabbits and you can have 6. But a 6 isn't enough to make a show herd, and that is my point that I want to make is don't limit the amount of rabbits. Use what you have in place. You have animal control. You have other city resources.
Ruby, thank you very much.
Yep.
Mayor, I have a question for that speaker.
Yes, Ruby, would you mind coming back, please? Or, Counselor, I'll tell you what. Ruby, would you mind just sitting down, please? And then I'm going to come back to you, Counselor Anderson Jr. Sir, if you'd come forward. Thank you. Thank you, Ruby.
Good evening. I'm one of those parents Ruby just talked about that
Could you just introduce yourself, please?
Sorry, forgot about that part. My name is Rich Sigmund.
Thanks, Rich.
I've been living in Sioux Falls now with my family for 4 years. My wife grew up in Montrose, and we decided to move to Sioux Falls after getting done with the Army for 17 years. We love it here. The schools are great. I'm one of those parents that Ruby talked about that was I had no idea that when we moved here we were getting involved in rabbits. I'm one of those parents that was so happy that I ran into Ruby and some other folks at at the county fair at the W.H. Lyons Fairground and started talking to them. My daughter got involved in rabbits. It's been such a positive experience for her. It's been great. There's other things around Sioux Falls that my children have experienced here that they have that they haven't anywhere else. The schools have been great. Camp Leif Erikson has been a positive experience. Camping, 4-H as a whole. These are some of the positive things that our kids have experienced since moving to Sioux Falls. And rabbits are a big part of that 4-H, as are all livestock. We're concerned that this change will adversely affect the 4-H program in Minnehaha County, Turner County, McCook County, and Lincoln County. The state fair itself, as I have lived here and started going and talking to folks, has increased in exhibits and fairgoers over the last 8 years. Every year we hear in the news about the new record-breaking crowds. It's not because of rabbits, but rabbits are a part of this 4-H program and part of the state fair, so it's all together. More specifically, the increase in the rabbit exhibits over the years have resulted in there only being reserved space for 4-H rabbits. Anybody else that shows in the open shows has to come in as a first-come, first-served basis. That's how good it's been. That's how popular it's been. And I would hate to lose that here. The change would most definitely reduce or eliminate the rabbits from the 4-H programs in the local area. I mean, it would be, without being directly involved, it'd be hard to imagine the Turner County Fair being affected or McCook County. But the rabbit breeders here in Sioux Falls make up 1/3 of the state program. So a lot of kids get their knowledge and their experience from the folks here and get their rabbits as well. In addition, the state as a whole, I believe, would be affected. The South Dakota Rabbit Breeders Association and the local clubs host rabbit shows throughout the state. Ruby had just talked to one about the one that we just had at the state farm show back in January. Like I said, about 1/3 of the state Rabbit Breeders Association members live in Sioux Falls, and about 1/3 of those people hold the higher positions in that club. This change would definitely make them go away, and that club, the state club, would be adversely affected for sure. If I wasn't directly involved in this group, I would probably think, so what? It's a bunch of rabbits. Who cares? You know, the kid's got 4 pets instead of 20. It's not going to hurt anybody. Well, I'll just give you one example. At the farm show last January, I decided to help out. My daughter's doing the rabbits. I'm just sitting in the chair waiting for her to show. So the last couple of years I got involved and started helping these folks out. The first year I was there, I think it was about 1,800 rabbits. This year, there was 2,644 entries in a rabbit show. That's a lot of rabbits. And it was 2 days long. The local group, I saw people that came in from places like Minnesota, North Dakota, Iowa, Nebraska, Wyoming, and maybe some other places that I have forgotten. They come to Sioux Falls, they stay in the hotels, they visit our restaurants. The local club even has to fly in judges from other states because they just don't have enough to cover it. Raising rabbits has been a huge positive experience for my daughter, Alexis. It has taught her incredible lessons in responsibility, taking care of her pets and her rabbits, math, keeping track of her supplies and costs and the rabbits, and biology. She's learned way too much in biology watching these rabbits breed. And then in today's day and age of iPhones, Facebook, and gaming, my daughter actually spends more time outside and taking care of her rabbits. We're not fighting her to get off the couch or get off the iPhone or get off the laptop as much as we used to now that she has her rabbits. I have not had a complaint in my neighborhood from any of my neighbors. In fact, I have more neighbors' kids over my house than I probably would like, but hey, that's a small price to pay. Maybe this is something that just wanted to bring to the council's awareness as a whole, that I think Sioux Falls as a city by this change would definitely hurt some of the 4-H programs, some of the kids, and definitely the local club that does most of the work for the state. Thank you for your time.
Rich, thank you. We appreciate it. Sir, welcome.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thanks for your time tonight. My name is John Jackson. I live here in Sioux Falls, have my entire life. I have concerns about the rabbits as well, or urban agriculture as a whole. I don't want to get into a rabbit chicken debate. But I think it's unrealistic to think that your neighbor can have livestock in their yard and not have it affect you. I had a map created and I didn't realize we'd have PowerPoint available to us, but if you look at my specific house, I mean, you'd be looking at an 80%, you'd be looking at about 11 neighbors within 100 feet. So you need 9 of them, 8 of them, 9 of them, depending. And most of those won't be impacted. So to some of the previous speakers, obviously, if the guy in my backyard up 2 houses has got a bunch of chickens or rabbits or what have you, and all of his neighbors are okay with it, it's certainly going to impact me. And my concerns are many. I have small children as well. Living in the city of Sioux Falls, I grew up in the country. Living in the city of Sioux Falls, I generally don't find mice in my house. I don't have any problems with rodents. I don't have predators around, anything like that. My concern is that the rabbit droppings, the rabbits being in pens or chickens or what have you, would certainly attract predators, potentially mice. Again, I don't have mice in my house, but I know people who do. Property value is another question. I know Councilman Staggers touched on that on an earlier topic, but definitely I think it would impact people's property values, which would be important. And then the last thing somebody touched on earlier too is the ordinances. So what other ordinances will this open up? If 80% is good for the animals, then can I keep my camper in front of my house if I get 80% of my neighbors to approve it? I mean, there's many ordinances I couldn't even begin to talk about how many might be affected if we did an 80%. I feel it's got to be 100% or nothing. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, John.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Just want to thank you for this opportunity, and special thanks to Councilor Rolfing and Karski for putting all the time and energy into the task force process. My name is Wyatt Erlacher. I reside at 809 East Presentation Street, Sioux Falls. And I've had chickens on my property for the last 3 years, approximately. I have never had any predation, no mice, no rodents, never noticed anything like that, just to address the previous comments. As a member of the task force, I spent 13 months, 14 months, meetings, taking public input, debating, researching ordinances in other communities. A lot of work, a lot of thought went into the process. And I basically just want to come here tonight to ask you to honor that process and to vote in favor of the proposal as originally presented, and to not make it any more restrictive. The 80%, which seems to be the big issue in question here tonight, that was a compromise. The whole thing, the whole ordinance was a compromise. If you think about the history of Sioux Falls, as long as we've been a city, people have been raising animals, rabbits, chickens in town. And so, to put some limits on that, we are restricting anybody who's already doing this. And I feel like what we have in the proposal is quite restrictive, and it's a compromise of both sides. So I just hope that you, and I ask you not to restrict it any further. So thank you for your time.
Why, thank you. Welcome. Miss.
Hi, my name is Rita Stelzer. I was born, I went to school, I volunteered, and I work in this city. I have my entire life. I won't go into the talk on building up 4-H, as many people have here this evening, because I think you already understand the importance of that in our community. I was very important in that and have been very forward in supporting that in our community. So I won't go any further there. But what I want to bring up to you is the fact that I, as a rabbit breeder, have been doing this for 25 years in the city limits of Sioux Falls. I have been at my present location for 17 years. I have never had a complaint or a problem with my animals until the last couple years when a new neighbor moved in next door. That's fine. He doesn't approve or like what I do. I understand that, but I don't think that because one person who moved into an area should prohibit someone from doing something that they've probably been doing for a pretty good part of a lifetime. Now, I also feel and want you to know that I have organizations, which I'm a member of, outside of this state and this city, which govern how I raise my rabbits, how I present my rabbits, how I keep them. And believe me, if they weren't healthy, if there were mice or rats or any other rodents near them, they would know that. And of course, I would know it, and I would not allow it. These animals are way too valuable to let anything like that happen. I don't want those in my community. I don't want them in my neighborhood either. I want you to also notice that there was one person, Shauna Goldhammer, brought up at the last meeting, April 2nd, that was against having, that was the person who brought against having rabbits in a neighborhood. I feel out of 150,000 people in our city that perhaps rules about the number of rabbits or animals that people should have, the feet from a property line that people should have these animals, and maybe the percentage of a neighborhood should maybe not be the rules that you're making, because you've already been elected as officials to enforce rules, which we have. You've hired police, health department, animal control, and humane society to govern us. If I have animals and they are stinking, or if I'm having manure out there, or I'm causing rodents to come in, that's why the police are here, that's why the health department is here, and that's why everybody else is around in our neighborhoods. So I plead with you, please do not try to enforce rules and regulations on people that have been in your community. I feel like I support your community. I love Sioux Falls. I've lived here my entire life. I plan to continue living here. And I plan to work and be part of the city government, city rules. I fully support you to do that. But please don't start putting regulations of numbers. As we all know, there are people that should not have one child. There are people that should not have one animal. There are people that don't take care of them. They shouldn't be entitled to that. That's why we have our police. That's why we have our human decency people out there. That's why this city hired all these people to run these rules and regulations, not to put a number on. You should have this, you should have that. I don't want to stand here and debate that I should have 5, 10, 20, 40 animals. That's not the point. The point is to take care of them and have it be a good part of the city. Urban agriculture, yes, 4-H, open class. You've heard, a lot of people are involved. Thank you.
Thanks, Rita.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address you all. My name is Darcy Lemoncraig. I have lived in Sioux Falls for almost 5 years now, and it is one of the most interesting and dynamic cities I have ever lived in. And as somebody who moved 15 times by the time I got out of high school, that's saying something.
Thank you.
So one of the things that makes it so interesting and dynamic is the urban agriculture, the local foods movements, and the things like that. And we are lucky enough to have chickens in our backyard. I can tell you that they take less time, less effort, less care than my cats. And my cats have yet to fix me breakfast. It's been a great learning experience for my children. I can tell you I've never had any kinds of problems with mice of any sort. My neighborhood is full of very fat squirrels, but I don't think I have anything to do with that. The closest thing we've had to a predator is a neighbor's dog who got into our coop, which was less to do with us and more to do with the neighbor's dog. I just wanted to say that 100% is a very high bar to set for neighbor approval. I do think 80% makes good sense. We are living in each other's pockets out here, basically, in the city. But I think I would be hard-pressed to get 100% approval on keeping my children, much less my chickens. That gives one person the ability to shoot down something. And I'm not saying that everybody's opinion shouldn't go into this, but I do think 100% is a really, really high bar to set on our chickens. So thank you very much for giving me the time to address you, and I appreciate all the consideration that you've given and all the time you've spent listening and talking and thinking about this.
Darcy, thank you, and thanks for the positive comments on our town. We appreciate it. Mr. Stanga?
Tim Stanga. I've thought about this for a long time. We let a person have 4 dogs or 4 cats, but yet we're going to let people have 6 chickens or more or 6 rabbits or more. So are the dog owners and cat owners going to come in and say that I want 6 dogs or 6 cats, or I want to be able to have more? 100% is not far off, because I'm looking at my property. If I have my house up for sale and people are interested in my house, and then we walk in my backyard and there's a bunch of chickens or rabbits, that might lose the sale on my house. Then who do I go after? Do I go after the city? Do I go after the city council? I couldn't tell you. But I've thought about this a lot, and really and truthfully, I think it should be 0. I think we got to put a point down that we got to put 0 down, that you can't have them in town. If you want to live on a farm or an acreage, then you can have your rabbits or your chickens. But for me, it's either 100% or 0. Thanks.
Mr. Stanga, thank you very much. Ma'am, before you speak, come forward, please. Thank you. We've really had some good dialogue here. We really have. We're just over about 40 minutes on this. And ma'am, I'm going to let you speak. Most of the speakers have been within the 5 minutes. You see folks are prepared. They've got papers ready to go. Different topics have been covered. That makes it much more productive. Really appreciate that. You've heard differing views. That's expected when you're in a council meeting like this. And then probably most importantly, very professional, fair, and productive. We are over 40 minutes right now, and again, it's all been good dialogue. We want to hear you as well. But with that in mind, if you don't have other topics, maybe I'd encourage we let the council do their work. But Miss, thank you for being so patient. Welcome. If you just introduce yourself to the people of the town.
Thank you. My name's Janet Cox. I want to thank you for the opportunity, and I promise I'll keep mine short and sweet. For a long time, you know, we've also lived and been able to experience what this is like, living next to a large number of animals. I don't think our concern is that somebody has, you know, 6 rabbits or 6 chickens. With that, you know, when you're looking at numbers of 80 or more, yes, they may not make any noise, But I can tell you firsthand what it's like to live next to that with the smell that goes on. You're not able to open your windows and things like that, especially if you want to enjoy your backyard, you know, with families, friends, things like that. And so, you know, I do understand that the rabbits, you know, aren't a nuisance as far as noise like a dog would be. But we've also limited dogs. And so when we're looking at something with smell that's impacting, you know, neighbors as well, I feel like it should be left up to the neighbors that are right next to that property that it is impacting with that. And so that's where, you know, with going with the 100%, you're looking at the people, too, that are dealing directly with that. You know, I also grew up on a farm and participated in 4-H, and so I understand it's important for kids to be able to have that opportunity. I do also know that, you know, with being in 4-H, I didn't have to have 80 different animals to be able to show one at a county fair. Also, you know, as far as just looking at the different amendments, I would just encourage our council members to vote in favor of amendments A and also B. Thank you.
Janet, thank you. Sir, welcome.
Hello, my name is Darren Cox, and I do have something else to bring up. So
Thanks,
I won't
Darren.
talk about the same thing.
Okay.
I would like everyone to acknowledge all the time that went into the Urban Agriculture Committee. Today, if you currently have an issue with health department, with you have 200 this animal or 200 of that animal, and you do call them in because it's a nuisance, I'm here standing before you to tell you this is going on over 2 years through the court system with the fine people in the city of Sioux Falls. So if you think our current ordinances that just allow you to call the health department or something like that to take care of it, then they have to go and they have to sue this person to try to remove the 100 animals. And we're at 2 years now, and there's no end in sight unless we get this done tonight and the amendments that are proposed get voted on and get passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you very much. Again, very, very productive, fair, professional. I really appreciate it, and I know the council does too. Council, I'm going to now put it in your hands. Any dialogue I'm getting pointed towards Councilor Anderson Jr.
I just had a couple questions for
Yes, sir.
Ruby.
Ruby, please come forward. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Ruby. Just a couple quick questions. Number one, how many members do you have in this rabbit association?
We have 12 families.
How many average rabbits do you have to be a competitor showcasing these bunnies?
Well, you know, everybody's a little bit different as to, you know, the number of breeds that they have. And, you know, some people only have one breed of rabbit, and some have 3 or 4 different breeds of rabbits. So that number does vary. And it's, you know, pretty much an individual thing as to how many they're going to have on their premises or, you know, on their property. So it does vary. And there's some people, you know, even have their rabbits in a house. So.
Okay, thank you.
That it?
Councilor Buck.
Ruby, before you leave, how many rabbits do you have personally in your residential lot?
Well, I don't live right in the Sioux Falls city limits, so.
So you don't, it doesn't matter to you?
Yes, it does, because this is my club, and these are my friends, and the city limits are 25 feet from my building.
Okay, so how many rabbits do you have on your residential lot right now?
I have about 100.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Staggers.
A question for Shanna Goldhammer. I'm going to ask you kind of a rhetorical question, and that is, with this proposed ordinance, what would you personally like to have? Would you like to have 2 chickens on a person's property that smells and makes noises but complies with the ordinance? Or would you rather have 10 chickens that do not smell, do not make noises, and do not comply with the ordinance? Because I think this is the major fallacy of this ordinance.
It was
Counselor,
rhetorical,
are
so
you
you're not
asking her?
expecting an answer.
Shauna, Counselor, are you asking her
What she would
for her
prefer
own
to have.
personal opinion, or are you
Her own
asking her on
personal
behalf of
opinion.
the
Her own
city?
her own personal
Because
opinion.
I don't know if it's appropriate to ask her personal opinion. And again, I don't want to quell your questioning, but again, she's just acting on behalf of the city.
That's the reason I wanted her personal opinion.
All right, very good.
Mr. Mayor, she's
yes,
acting
Councilor
on
Bach.
behalf of the city council. The city council is this ordinance forward, not Shauna Goldhammer. She acted as staff.
You can ask me that question as the chairman of that.
There you go.
Yeah, Rex, what would you rather have? Would you
Councilor
like to have
Rolfing, go right
2
ahead.
complying chickens that make noise and smell, or 10 non-complying chickens that are quiet and do not make a smell?
Personally, I'd rather have neither. Thank you.
That's not, the question was
That
either
was-
or.
Councilor Staggers, do you have any other questions, sir?
No, I mean, once again, that's a major fallacy with
Very
this
good.
whole
Thank
ordinance.
you. Thank you. Good job. Good job. Councilor Bach.
I have a question for, and I apologize, I didn't get last names, but Darcy, the chicken owner, could I ask a question of you, please? Darcy, you live in the city limits of Sioux Falls, right?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And how many chickens do you have on your residential lot?
I have 4.
And you understand that the ordinance only requires permission from your neighbors if you want more than 6,
I do.
right? Okay. Do you want more than 6?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Jameson.
A question for Shauna, and first off, yeah, I'd like to recognize the efforts of the task force, way over and beyond a lot of work, and there's a lot of good things that I see in this, but there are a few things that I don't. But if I could, a few questions, Shauna. The slaughtering of animals. Today, that is not allowed, right? Or is it?
Today, there is no language in any code of ordinances that speaks to it.
Okay, so in this ordinance, it does create language that prohibits the slaughtering of any animals, chickens, rabbits, or...
It also defines what slaughter is.
It defines, okay, yes.
Which has to do with the killing of the animal, not necessarily bringing it home and cutting it up for hunting purposes or whatever. We're specifically talking about the slaughter, the killing of the animal.
Right, okay, and the manure, the removal of the manure is required within 24 hours? Is that
That is
true?
correct. That is in the current code of ordinances today.
And if it is not, a nuisance is created. Would that be?
It could be considered a nuisance, yes.
Okay. If I could, this is weird, but the 6 chickens, have we determined just how much manure they generate?
No, not specific to chickens, although we did talk about manure. And specifically how the bigger birds, especially geese,
right.
produce much more manure than chickens. It can vary on this type of species of chicken, how much manure it raises, and that's primarily why we had recommended the provisions for the licensing of those bigger birds, that you don't get those automatic. You don't get 6 automatically. You need to get those licensed if you want to have those bigger birds that would have potential to have more waste involved with them.
If I could, the license, what do I gain? What does a neighbor, what does the city gain, or the applicant gain by having a license? How do we benefit from the geese owner who wants to have them? How do we gain by having a license required?
It has to do with the petition, that the license would also require the petition of your neighbors to sign off, a petition of approval. And we did study very many different municipalities on how to handle ordinances, and they got to tell you, they're all across the board. There are ones that have strict prohibitions. There are ones that allow hobby farms in the city limits. So we came up with a compromise and modeled the petition process after how they handle it in the city of Minneapolis.
One last question. I've got more, but I'll yield the floor. But the idea that today you could have chickens. Nothing in our ordinance prohibits the keeping of animals unless they cause a nuisance. And
Right. Well, unless, no, and there is the 4-pet rule.
Okay, right, okay.
But that doesn't include birds and fish, and of course, a chicken.
But today it exists. People have chickens around, and it's happening. This attempt is really just to limit a number, define those chickens and rabbits to a number that has probably been determined to not really cause a nuisance. Would that be? Oh, okay.
That would be the 6, yes.
Councilor, thank you. Shauna, really good job. Thank you. Very good. Councilor Jameson, you had another question?
Well, if I could, I guess I've made it clear, I think, from the beginning that I didn't think that the chickens and rabbits ordinance was necessary, but what I've learned and what's happened is there's a lot of definitions and things that have come in this that are very good, I think, and we need them, and I think the city attorney's office needs them to help enforce those nuisance rules. But what I don't like is this is just perfect for unintended consequences to occur. By having people go and get 6 chickens, hope for the best, whatever, and things happen, and all of a sudden they're having chicken soup, and the neighbor next door is wondering what's going on across the street, and all these things. And I guess I like what we've got in place that without limiting people to a number of chickens and rabbits, but I like the addition of all the definitions and all the 26, I think it is, items of defining nuisance. Those are great. I think we need those, but I think we can go without the keeping of animals part and eliminate the chickens and the rabbits and keep the rest.
Councilor Mbach?
I highly disagree. I've heard so much from neighbors, especially in the Central District, who are dealing with issues that because we don't have limits on animals, people who want to live in town are living next to these little farms that stink and they're loud. And as Mr. Cox noted, even though we have enforcement in place, that enforcement isn't strong enough in our ordinance that we can actually go in and do anything about it. There are upwards of 100+ rabbits in the backyard next door to his house, and they smell. That's not right. It's not fair. And he can't really do anything about it. And he's testified here tonight. He's been in court for 2 years with the city because we can't, as a city, we don't have the teeth in the ordinance that we need to have in it. So absolutely, the nuisances need to be defined and the numbers need to be defined. And I would ask that you do vote for this ordinance and you do vote for the amendments.
With that in mind, would anybody, just to get us started, would anybody be willing to create a motion? And then let's talk about this even more. Councilor Rolfing, thank you. I think that's, and then Councilor Karski has seconded that. We do have a motion on the floor to approve this reading by Councilor Rolfing. It was seconded by Councilor Karski. Other comments?
Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Karski.
When this process began, what kind of was enlightening for me, and quite frankly somewhat amazing, is that if you live in the county, in Minnehaha County, you can't have chickens, you can't have ducks, you can't have goats unless you're zoned agricultural. If you're zoned residential and you live in Minnehaha County outside of Sioux Falls city limits, you're not allowed to have any of these animals. But you can move into town and have them. It was really quite enlightening. So this is more than just chickens and rabbits. This is about, in one case, I had somebody call up because their neighbor moved in 2 goats and an 800-pound round bale. Drove every dog in the neighborhood nuts, but he was totally within their right to do it. So I'm going to encourage your support of this.
Councilor Rolfing.
I would encourage your vote, your positive vote on this also. It's exactly what both Councilor Erpenbach and Karski have talked about. The ordinance that we have now is vague. Nuisance is not defined, and that's where the problem has been. We need to define that a little bit more, give it some teeth so that when the people in Shauna's office and other offices go out and try to enforce what a nuisance is, they know what it is rather than it's one word against the other. And that's what they're up against right now, and they don't have any teeth in it. And therefore, we are in court for 2 years 3 years, whatever it is, and nothing gets done. And both sides are trying to decide which is right and what is wrong. And here we're able to give it some teeth and define some of it right now. And that's what this ordinance does. So I would encourage you to vote yes on this.
Councilor Entenmann.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to propose an amendment to this motion.
Very good, Councilor.
Motion to amend Section 90.078, licensing of animals and fowl, by removing the first sentence in the third paragraph and replace it with the following sentence. All applications for licensed certificates must be accompanied by a written consent of 100% of the owners of all real estate situated within 100 feet of the applicant's real estate, not including those abutting properties, and the appropriate fee.
Second, Erpenbach.
There has been a motion, and it has been seconded. Councilor, just to be aware, it's a little bit different than what I have written in my notes. Is that okay?
That's correct.
Thank you very much. Councilor Entenmann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is one of those cases, you know, we do take it really seriously, and there are a lot of definitions in this ordinance that are very important. And we do live in a city, and I do realize that people have pets. They show dogs, they show rabbits, they raise chickens. This doesn't eliminate the possibility of keeping rabbits or chickens. It just limits it to 6 with the idea that you can ask your neighbor's consent, who are property owners, and you can get 100% of them to consent, and you can raise that number, okay? I just believe that in this point, to protect the existing neighbors, the existing property owners, that we do need to make this 100% of the owners, and I would ask that you support this amendment.
Councilor Rolfing.
I would agree with Councilor Entenmann on this and give it my support.
Thank you, Councilor. Before we proceed, just 1 second, please.
Yeah, we're just checking on some additional language here. Just tweaking words.
Okay.
So you end at real estate, I think is what you're going to end up doing.
Ms. Bigford, would you mind coming forward to the podium, please? Thank you. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Paul Bangford, Assistant City Attorney for the City of Sioux Falls. I know that there was some modification to the previous proposal for Amendment A. The way that it was read, the part was retained that it said not including those abutting properties. That language was necessary when there was previous language about 80% of owners that didn't live on abutting properties. But if it is just changed to a flat-out consent of 100%, I think that the not including those abutting properties would be confusing, and would just like to bring that up.
So it needs to end at the word real estate. Is that correct, Paul?
Correct. If you did consent of 100% of the owners of the several descriptions of real estate situated within 100 feet of the applicant's real estate, and the appropriate fee, getting rid of that sentence, I think that that would
amendment, Mr. Mayor. I would move to amend the amendment. Am I doing this right, guys? Everybody, are we nodding? Substitute. I'm substituting an amendment, sorry. I am making a substitute amendment then, which would read exactly as Councilor Entenmann read it, but it would end at the word estate, striking not including those abutting properties and the appropriate fee, correct? Substitute amendment, so then I need a second.
Second, Aguilar.
Thank you.
Councilor Box made a substitute amendment, and it was seconded by Councilor Erpenbach. I'm sorry, Councilor Entenmann, the two folks that I got Entenmann. So if you wouldn't mind reading that one more time, I'd appreciate it.
Can I read it?
Go ahead there. Between one of you, read it.
I'll go ahead and read it, Mr.
Thank
Mayor.
you.
Thank you very much. And I do apologize. I did make the correction. So
Thank
a
you.
motion to amend Section 90.078, licensing of animals and fowl, by removing the first sentence in the third paragraph and replace with the following sentence. All applications for license certificates must be accompanied by a written consent of 100% of the owners of all real estate situated within 100 feet of the applicant's real estate, period.
Mr. Bangford, I am looking for your approval. Just within head nod would be great.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The one thing I did want to address, and Councilor Rolfing had just asked me about this, Amendment C also talks about getting rid of and the appropriate fee, and so I think that A has taken care of that on the fee issue as well.
We're not at C yet there, Paul, but thank you. Very good. But you're giving me a nod on A as read by Councilor Intiman. Yes, sir. Very good. We do have a substitute motion, and if there is no further discussion, roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson?
Yes.
Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
That has passed 8-0. Any further discussion, councilors?
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Rolfing.
Mayor, I'd like to propose an amendment on section 90.001, the definitions in there, and have that the word rabbits as is found in there. Let's see here. The word rabbits found between the word cat or by removing the words rabbit, the word rabbit found between the words cats and guinea pigs within the definition of pets.
Councilor Rolfing has made a motion to amend section 90.001 definitions by removing the word rabbits found between the words cats and guinea pigs within the definition of pet. Is there a second?
Second, Karski.
There's a second by Councilor Karski. Is there any comments on this? A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson?
Yes.
Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
That has passed 8-0. Council, any further comments on this? Yes, Councilor Staggers.
Yes, I'd like to propose an amendment that it's not before you right now because I just thought of this during the testimony. I thought we did have very good testimony from the people with the dealing with the rabbits and showing them. So the amendment I'd like to propose is I move to delete all other references to the term rabbit or rabbits in the ordinance, proposed ordinance.
Counselor, could you repeat that, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
I move to delete all other references to the term rabbit or rabbits in the proposed ordinance.
Very good. Councilor Staggers has made a motion. Is there a second? That motion dies for lack of second. Thank you. We now have an amended main motion. Any further comments? Councilor Jamison.
Thank you. I have a question for the city attorney, whoever would want to talk,
Paul,
I suppose.
welcome.
There's some discussion about defining nuisance and the definitions within this ordinance. Apparently without the definition of, or the quantification of 6 rabbits or 6 chickens, you're unable to enforce nuisance rules?
The current ordinances do say that you can keep animals and fowl, but not on a scale that is a nuisance. So what the city does currently attempt to enforce the rules based upon what we believe the language says is a nuisance, such as we do have a case pending currently dealing with a number of rabbits. So we certainly do attempt to enforce that with the language that is currently there. But that's the language that we have. It's not on a scale that's a nuisance. Correct.
But with the additional 23 descriptions that are in this, I don't know if they're new, but the 23 that are here, are there some that are new?
Some of them are new. The underlined definitions that are set forth in section 90.001, I think there's 5 or 6 new definitions. Some of those did exist in that section before, yes.
But without the number of 6, do you feel like you're, I guess I don't want to maybe say too much, but I would think that we could still get a definition of a nuisance determined by these 23 items here without suggesting that if somebody has 6 chickens, that only that because they have more than 6, creates a nuisance. Clearly, you can have 6 and have a heck of a nuisance on your hands.
Correct. Under the current ordinances and under the modifications, I think the city would still be free to pursue nuisance cases if someone had under 6 rabbits or under 6 chickens, and we felt that we could show that they were a nuisance. But it puts a number on and an expectation on what the city believes you should have for that number. So we could still pursue one that had less than 6. It gives the city more of an ability to say based upon certain numbers that that's too many.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank
Councilor
you.
Rolfing.
I just want to take a quick second and say thank you to Shauna Goldhammer and people on her staff for all the help she gave us during this whole process. She did a wonderful job. And then the people that were on the task force. I see some of them in the audience here, and I want to say thank you very much for the time and the effort and all the work that you put into it too. It was a lot of work, and we had our moments, but I think we came up with something here that will work. Thank you very much from here.
We do have an amended main motion on the floor. Councilor Staggers.
Yes. I'd like to mention that the many years I've been on the city council, I've never had one complaint about agriculture. Not one complaint. However, I've had many, many complaints about dogs. So it seems to me here that we might be dealing with an issue that's not that important while ignoring another issue that is really important, the dogs creating noise. And I wonder if we're really solving a problem here. Because, you know, I did ask the question, what would you rather have? 2 complying chickens that make noise and smell next door to you, or would you like to have 10 non-complying chickens that do not make smell and do not make noise? I think most people are going to say, this is ridiculous, just having these numbers. The real issue should be the smell, the noise, the other nuisances that they create. We want to prevent the nuisances. We're just counting chickens and rabbits. That's all we're doing right now and feeling good about it. What we should be doing is to focus on a general noise ordinance, general smell ordinance that applies to many different areas, not just chickens and rabbits and agriculture, but dogs and cats and everything else. But we're not doing that. We're giving the appearance of solving a problem when we're not really doing that. So that being the case, I would urge my fellow council members to vote against this ordinance, and let's really try to come up with an ordinance that deal with the nuisances of animals next door to you. This isn't doing that at all.
Very good. Any further discussion, Council? A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson.
Yes.
Entenmann.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jamison.
No.
Karski.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Staggers.
No.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 6-2. Folks, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to reconvene the City Council meeting. Thank you. 5 minutes. It is now 9:52. We're going to start at 9:57. Two.
has a louder voice.
The meeting will start in 30 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you.
The meeting now commence again. Thank you very much. Mr. Cooper, item 30.
Second reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by amending Chapter 37, Taxation of the Ordinance. Planning Commission recommends approval.
This is an amendment to update our downtown business improvement district regulations. In that ordinance, there are provisions for exemption of residentially zoned property, and this will update that in conformance with the Shape Places new zoning classifications. It will not change any of the assessments or any other aspect of that downtown bid.
Thanks, Mike. Folks, it's the second reading. Anybody want to speak to this item? Thank you. Council?
Move to approve Erpenbach.
Councilor Erpenbach's made a motion to approve item 30, seconded by Councilor Entenmann. Is there any discussion? A roll call vote, please. I'm sorry, Councilor. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson,
Second reading?
I heard. Yes.
Did he say yes? Okay. Entenmann,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Jamison,
Yes.
Karski,
Yes.
Rolfing,
Yes.
Staggers, Aguilar,
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 31. Oh, pass? Oh, thank you. That is passed 8-0. Thank you, Councilor Staggers. Item 31.
just got stromy. Right. Okay, item 31 is second reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at 7100 West Songbird Street from the RS2 Residential District to the RD1 Residential District, petition number 2013-0203, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval.
This property is located at the northwest corner of West Songbird Street and North La Mesa Drive. The applicant is Gary Haar. This parcel is about 0.6 of an acre in size. It's currently vacant, and the purpose is to construct one twin home. So under our new procedure now, rather than going through a conditional use permit, we're going through a rezoning process. The applicant is proposing to construct one twin home on this property. The adjoining land is currently developed with single family, and then on the east side of La Mesa is a manufactured housing park. So I believe this is probably about the last vacant lot in that area. The twin home would front on West Songbird Street. We did have neighborhood concern expressed about this item, although the Planning Commission has recommended approval of the rezoning. And since the Planning Commission hearing, I don't know that we've had any more public input. Our office has not heard from any other property owners.
Thanks, Mike. Did Mr. Haar want to speak on this item? No. Very good.
Okay.
This is, again, a second reading, folks. Would anybody want to speak about this item? Very good. Council, I'll leave it in your hands.
Move to approve, Entenmann.
Second, Karski.
Councilor Entenmann's made a motion to approve this item, seconded by Councilor Karski. Any discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson,
Yes.
Entenmann,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Jamison,
Yes.
Karski,
Yes.
Rolfing,
Yes.
Staggers,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 8-0. Item 36.
Item 36 is a resolution of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, correcting the legal description of annexation, resolution number 12-13, annexation 2012-12-05, legal description correction for West 12th Street and North Ellis Road.
This was an annexation approved by the City Council on West 12th Street. The owner is Sukup Construction. It's just over 200 acres. And in the legal description, there was an error in the portion that's highlighted. The south one half of section 16-10150 was inadvertently left out, so this will correct that.
Council, anybody like to make a motion to approve?
Move to approve, Entenmann.
Councilor Emmons made that motion, seconded by Councilor Karski. If there is no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson.
Yes.
Entenmann.
Yes.
Erpenbach. Yes. Jamison.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
Aguilar. Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 8-0. Item 32.
Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at the northwest corner of Westfall Street and North Ellis Road from the A1 Agricultural District to the RS2 Residential District and RC Recreation Conservation District, petition number 2013-0206, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval.
This is a portion of the property that we just corrected in terms of the annexation. This is on the west side of Ellis Road and north of 12th Street. It's part of the development that's being proposed as Cherry Lake Reserve. The applicant is Steve Van Buskirk with Van Buskirk Companies. This portion of the rezoning that's being requested tonight is about 118 acres of the total land area. And this will be for the residential portion to the west as well as to the lake on the north side. So approximately 71 acres will be zoned for single-family residential, and about 48 acres will be zoned for the lake. The balance of the property that's currently shown as AG or agricultural will come back at a later time as part of the mixed-use development proposal. So again, this portion being requested tonight is to construct a single-family portion adjacent to the private lake. We also had, at the Planning Commission meeting, we had some neighborhood concerns, primarily from the south side of 12th Street, asking about drainage, other impacts that this development might have. If you recall, when we approved the preliminary plan, we did have one gentleman asking about the drainage that lives on the south side of 12th Street. As we said, we'll continue to have those discussions as we get more detailed drainage plans, but this is one of the preliminary steps, which is the zoning process. So the recommendation by the Planning Commission is to approve this portion of the rezoning.
Mike, thank you. This is a second reading. Would anybody want to speak to this item? Mr. Van Busker, welcome.
Steve Van Buskirk, 5800 Remington Place. I'm just, in interest of time, if there's questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I do, on the drainage issue, we got our preliminary plans in process, nearly approved. Our development engineering plans are in. We'll share those with the two neighbors. I've communicated with that once we have those plans done. So, but other than that, we're excited about our project. It should be a great thing for West 12th Street.
Thank you very much. If you just stay there, please. Council, I'm going to leave it in your hands now. Oh, sir, I apologize. Come forward. Welcome.
My name is Richard Cotton, and I currently live on the south side of the proposed development. I'm fine with the development and the planning of it. I do have some issues with the preliminary plans that I did see from the developer. Just some clarifications on the drainage. I currently have water that comes off the north side of Highway 42 where the proposed development would be, and it runs under the road onto my property. I did do a little digging on the state website and contacted the state since it is Highway 42, and it shows that when they designed that culvert, they designed it for 5 acres of runoff. In the preliminary drainage plan, it shows that he has 3 acres of runoff going towards a culvert, which is less. That is, and it also says 3 acres plus or minus. It doesn't clarify plus or minus what. It says plus or minus, it could be plus or minus 10 acres. I'd like to see some clarification for that. And then also, it says 3 acres. The state designed that culvert for 5 acres. I believe his 3 acres is 3 acres of the development, and it does not include the amount of surface footage that the road has, because there is a storm drain that runs into the culvert. So the 5 acres would include the upward slope of the road. Another thing is that is a 65-mile-an-hour state highway. I believe it's going to be a challenge to slow that speed limit down. Since it is a state highway, the city doesn't have, I don't believe they have jurisdiction over the speed limit. The state does their tests and everything, but in order for the city to have jurisdiction over the speed limit, I believe they have to take over the maintenance of that portion of the road. And from what I understand, that is quite a task as well. With that being said, I guess, is there any other questions?
Richard, very good job. Did your homework. Good job. I do want to try to get those answered, though. Richard, would you mind just hanging by?
Yep.
Steve, would you like to answer those first, or Mike?
Yeah, regarding drainage, one of the city ordinances, we're required not to increase the flow to our neighbors. So we either got to contain it and control it to be equal to or less than what's there. So what he's looking at is a 3 plus or minus is based on the elevation, so we can't exceed that 3 plus or minus. And I don't think I don't think the engineers allow us to add 13 acres into there. I think that'd be beyond what they'd accept.
Steve, would you stop there? Mike, does that make sense?
Yeah, that's correct. What Steve has said is that we have done a preliminary drainage study, but we will be doing more detailed engineering plans. And so, as we said last time, we'll keep in touch with the gentleman that spoke to make sure that we don't encroach or jeopardize any of adjoining property. As far as the speed limit, I think we can continue, still have those discussions with the DOT, because we have made some changes to the speed limit on the east side of Sioux Falls, out by Arrowhead Park, I know. So I think we could ask them to take a look at this area as well.
Steve, I'm sorry to interrupt. Come forward.
Yeah, on the speed limit, city traffic engineering has already made application to the county or the state to reduce the speed limit on the west edge of our property there.
Did we have a specific speed limit that we had recommended? Do you know, Steve?
45 maybe.
I believe it was.
45?
We can find out for sure, yeah.
And Richard, I apologize. I can't remember the other questions now. Is it? Very good. Richard, I think you heard Mr. Cooper say that we will continue to work with you to get your questions addressed. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Stephen, did you have any other comments? Anybody else?
Mayor?
Yes, Counselor, I'm going to move it to you now. Counselor Anderson, Jr.
Mr. Busker, as we're talking about the speed on 12th Street and that, and one of the things that was discussed, I believe, during Shape Sioux Falls was slow-down lanes. Have you considered something like that to enter into your development, a slow-down lane, so that they're not impeding with traffic that's flowing behind them?
Yeah, when that section of road gets urbanized, which I don't know when that'll be. As part of the CIP process and everything that y'all work on. So when that happens, there'll be deceleration lanes.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure. I can't say it definitively, but I would imagine so.
Thank you.
Counsel, very good. Would anybody want to make a motion to approve item 32?
So move, Anderson.
Second.
Counselor Anderson Jr. has made that motion, seconded by Counselor Jamison. If there is no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson,
Yes.
Entenmann,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Jamison,
Yes.
Karski,
Yes.
Ralphing,
Yes.
Staggers,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 8-0. Item 33.
First reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by expanding Chapter 30, City Council, Subchapter Naming Facilities.
Mr. Fifely.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. City Council, Dave Fifely with the City Attorney's Office. Tonight, before you is a first reading of a proposed amendment to an ordinance that was spearheaded by Councilor Anderson as chair of the Public Services Committee and also the Public Services Committee, the other members, regarding not creating a new ordinance regarding naming rights, but expanding upon one that already exists. The current ordinance was passed in about 1997, and it merely named certain city buildings that could not be renamed without council approval. Since 1997, the entire country has realized an explosion of naming rights opportunities, both for what they call the name of the building or the skin of the building, as well as other portions of the building. The amended ordinance as it's proposed to you would simply establish standards for how to process these applications and allow them to go forward, and I will repeat this several times in a few moments. But I will tell you, as this ordinance, as proposed, clearly says, it will be required that you approve anything. The standards will be in ordinance. It'll be very transparent and very clear on what grounds that the council will approve or not approve a particular naming opportunity. It is not that this council is out looking for opportunities. It's simply a recognition of the fact that they exist and they will continue to do so. In that vein, we've noticed that the City of Brookings has adopted a naming rights policy, as well as the City of Yankton. According to the Yankton Press and Dakota, is currently discussing a similar naming rights policy for their city as well. I think a lot of our sister cities are recognizing, as this council has, that these opportunities are there. We need some standards in place. The legal commentators that have addressed this issue are also suggesting public entities adopt standards so that we know exactly what criterion will be looked at and how these will be processed going forward. As to the substance of the amended ordinance, the standards will generally be to honor and commemorate noteworthy persons who have contributed to the city, celebrate local history, places, events, or culture, to strengthen neighborhood identity, or to recognize native wildlife, flora, fauna, or natural features related to the community and the city. The crux of the standards is an application could be denied if the proposed naming or renaming may tend to bring disrepute upon the community for any reason, or would not be looked upon favorably by a majority of city residents. For a naming or renaming after a person, it would be prohibited until 5 years after death, unless the unanimous vote of both the underlying board that's reviewing the application and the city council would unanimously approve that naming, and that person had obviously substantially contributed to that facility. I know there's been some discussion about whether we should place a certain dollar amount, and I think that was left intentionally out. It's very difficult to place a dollar amount or a threshold because every naming opportunity will be unique. And the committee felt that it's better to not place a dollar amount on that particular proposal. The new amendment also, for the inside baseball part of it, centralizes the process. It creates an application process where you file it with the planning and zoning department, and then it's referred to a committee. And it recognizes how things are named now, where if it's library or parks, those boards comprised of citizens are already weighing in on naming opportunities, providing a recommendation to this council. That would continue. However, again, the basic standards that I just read to you would be in place to help guide that committee's consideration as they're recommending something to you. It also recognizes the street naming committee. And again, this council long ago set forth an ordinance what street naming criteria would be within the ordinance. And this more adds on to that by expanding what can be done on a renaming. And in particular, for renaming of a street, it requires notice to all the adjoining property owners, and people will have a chance to come to the public hearing in front of this council, offer their input if they approve or disapprove of the action of renaming a particular city. Meetings with the stakeholders were conducted thanks to Councilor Anderson's leadership. We met with a management group for the pavilion and the zoo. The Arboretum Society also weighed in on the proposal, and they are certainly all supportive of this proposal and understand its importance. These are city properties. They need final council approval when we're talking about significant naming of those particular public properties. For the legal part of it, it defines fixture, and for lawyers, a fixture is pretty usually fairly established in the law. I say that, there's a few lawyers in the crowd. They'll probably argue with me to say fixture is very well understood, but it's fairly well understood in the law. And it places certain exemptions to some, like donor plaques, engraved pavers and the like, that simply the number of times you would have to approve them would just be astronomical and beyond the pale of what you would want to do as a council. I will tell you that the Arboretum Society has also reviewed this, and they will request an amendment that will draft the language for your second reading, and will state basically that gardens, landscaped areas, and walks are exempted if they're not of a permanent nature. And again, the Arboretum Society may have some planting beds where, say, a hosta bed is planted. It's going to last for a few years before we have a new donor again. It's not a permanent naming, so an ordinance is a permanent placement of a naming right, or for at least a long duration of time. Again, we're trying to save the council from the nuances and minutia. A naming or renaming would need an ordinance, and again, that's for two readings and public input at the second reading. A commemorative renaming would require a resolution to be passed by the council, and again, would also require a public hearing before it was passed. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And folks, this is a first reading, so you don't have an opportunity to engage the council, but you will on the second reading. Council, questions of, yes, Councilor Staggs?
Yes, Dave, would this ordinance have prevented us from naming the event center the name it is now?
No, it would not, Councilor. This specifically provides that you can, the city can request proposals for naming, and then again, like you did with the event center, you approve the naming.
Councilor Rolfing?
Yes, Dave, other nonprofit organizations, would this have anything to do with them placing a name on their building if someone wanted to help sponsor them?
Again, this would only govern city property, Councilor.
Do we have anything, and maybe Mike can help with this too, of an ordinance that would prevent a sponsorship like that from going on a building of a nonprofit organization?
I can only think of, off the top of my head, Councilor, the signage requirements that you just had passed with the shape Sioux Falls, and it would be certainly based on the size of the sign, et cetera.
Okay.
I defer to Mike Cooper for any more of the basic nuances.
I'm just thinking of something that happened a few years ago, and I wanted to see if the shape places
Yes,
would...
it does address signage on private property or nonprofits.
It does? And
Yes.
what would that say?
It has to signify the use that's on the property.
Okay, so if
we have, I'll make it a little more confusing. We have on-premise and off-premise signage. On-premise is advertising or utilizing the name of the business or the agency that's on that property. So if you were able to get a sponsor for something on your property, right now Shape Places would say you can only advertise the name of your agency.
Okay, so let's take a hypothetical of let's say the Muscular Dystrophy Association owns their own building, and they get Coca-Cola to sponsor them for $100,000 a year if they can, and part of that is to put their name on the sign out in front.
Could not do it.
They could not do it, but right. We can, because we own Sanford, or we own the event center, we can do that because the Sanford complex gives us enough money to do that on our building out here at the event center. That doesn't quite seem like the right way to do that.
We can do that because we're naming that facility.
Okay, well, they named their building the Coca-Cola building at the Muscular Dystrophy Center.
Yeah, I don't know that I would see that as an actual realistic proposal, but what we have been approached would be, and I'll just give you a real life situation, Special Olympics up on north of Interstate 90. They wanted to get some sponsorships for their building expansion to put on their existing on-premise sign. and it would just say sponsor A, B, and C. Currently, you cannot do that. So that's different than what you're talking about.
Okay.
So there is a distinction.
I'm just giving it some thought, because I know we ran into that with the Soccer Association a few years ago.
Yep.
And we looked at the Wells Fargo sign on the on the theater on Pavilion, and that didn't seem like a good deal either. But we'll talk.
Yep.
Thank
and
you.
I think this ordinance will actually help clarify some of those.
Council, it is a first reading. Would anybody want to make a motion to approve it? To set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, April 9th for this item?
So move, Anderson.
Second, Karski.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made that motion, seconded by Councilor Karski. If there's no further discussion, on roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson.
Yes.
Entenmann.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jamison.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 8-0. Item 34.
34 is a resolution advising and giving consent to the temporary appointment of a member to the Civil Service Board, and that member is Tom Nicholson.
Council,
Move to approve the resolution, Entenmann.
Second, Erpenbach.
Councilor Entenmann has made that motion to approve this item, seconded by Councilor Erpenbach. If there's no discussion, on roll call vote, please. Yes, there is a, yes, Councilor
Just a
Erpenbach.
reminder about, because I didn't understand this before I asked it out loud earlier, why we're making a temporary appointment of a member to the Civil Service Board. If someone could, who would answer that? Could the attorney answer that? Could you?
Yes, please.
Counselor, there is going to be a upcoming appeal to the Civil Service Board where a couple of the other members have to recuse themselves, so we need a temporary appointment so that we can have all three positions seated for the Civil Service Board. For your information, Tom Nicholson is the State Bar President for South Dakota, and he's also a former member of the Civil Service Board, so he has experience.
Great, thank you.
It's a good question, Councilor. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson.
Yes.
Entenmann.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jamison.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Thank you. Item 35.
A resolution including certain contiguous territory within the corporate limits of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Annexation 2013-0103, West 85th Street and South Minnesota Avenue, southwest corner.
This is a request for annexation of just under 40 acres of land into the Sioux Falls city limits. The property is located on the west side of South Minnesota Avenue and south of 85th Street. The owner applicant is Springdale Development, LLC, and this is proposed for a commercial land use development. When we bring annexation petitions to you, it's a pretty basic process that we go through. First of all, the petition has to be signed by the property owners. The property being requested has to be contiguous to the city limits. And then the most important area that we look at is whether or not we can provide city services to this proposed annexation area. And in the standards that we use for annexation, it states that municipal utilities and access to a major street network are considered in terms of the proposed boundary and land uses, and that there is an agreed-upon timetable which municipal service will be extended into the contiguous territory. So the nexus that we use is basically, is it contiguous? Can we provide services within a reasonable period of time, which we have historically used up to 2 years, within a 2-year period. If, in this case, as this was brought to us, because we know it's being proposed for major commercial development, including a proposed Sam's Club, Walmart. The first thing that we looked at was our utility service boundaries. Because in our previous planning that we've looked at, this was on the edge of what we call Tier 1 growth area. And that was based on a general basin-wide sanitary sewer study that was done some time ago. So when this property was brought in for a proposed annexation, the first thing that we did was we had a more detailed engineering analysis put together. And that engineering analysis was done by a consulting firm and reviewed by the engineering division of our Public Works Department. and that engineering report did confirm that this property can be served with our existing sanitary sewer system, and that the additional flow from this proposed commercial development will not surcharge or overflow the city's sanitary sewer system. And that's a report that is a public document that we can make copies to anybody that would like to see that. So once we had verification that this can be served with our sanitary sewer, that meets the test of bringing that forward to you as a petition tonight. We're not considering tonight the zoning. We're not looking at the drainage. We're not looking at the street access. All that we're looking at is the first step in the development process, which is annexing this 40 acres of vacant agricultural property. It's currently zoned agricultural as part of the Lincoln County zoning ordinance. If you approve the annexation, it will continue to be zoned agricultural. If you approve this petition tonight, the next step would be that the City Planning Commission has on their agenda a proposed public hearing to consider the next step, which is looking at the rezoning of this from agricultural to commercial zoning. But we're not looking at that tonight. Tonight we're just looking at whether or not you believe you would approve this annexation petition.
Mike, thank you. And what is the date of that public hearing? Has that been set?
The Planning Commission public hearing is tomorrow night at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
If they move forward with their recommendation, the earliest it would come to the council for a final hearing would be May 7th.
Okay. Mike, thank you. Very good. So resolution, so folks, you do have an opportunity to engage the council on this. Again, this is a topic on annexation, but you certainly have the opportunity to engage the council on that topic. Please just come forward, introduce yourself, and welcome.
Good evening. My name is Dana Palmer. I am a resident of Sioux Falls. I live very near the area of 85th in Minnesota. My 3 little boys attend Harrisburg Journey, which is located at 77th and Grange. I will keep all of my comments restricted to the topic of annexation, and I'm certain that you've all done your homework regarding this topic, but I do want to bring a couple of issues to your attention in case anybody has missed them. Certainly in the audience, maybe not everyone's aware of them. I believe that the City Council should deny the petition for annexation for a number of reasons. The petition for annexation is inconsistent with the city's comprehensive plan, referenced in Shape Sioux Falls. It's inconsistent with the city's 2013 annexation priorities, and it's inconsistent with the city's own annexation program. I want to start first with a quote that I found in the city's annexation study. And it says, "Of utmost importance in the annexation process is the need to sensitively deal with the concerns of affected residences and property owners. By assuming political jurisdiction over an annexed area, the city also assumes a responsibility to protect the lifestyle and economic well-being of its residents. Particularly in established residential neighborhoods, consideration should be given to such things as zoning and street and utility improvements, which might adversely affect the character of the area." I would ask that all of you bear these in mind when you make your decision tonight, and I'm certain that you will. First of all, I want to point out that Map 2, which is on page 27 of the shaped places that you're all familiar with, this sets forth the development areas in the City of Sioux Falls. And it's the growth management plan tier structure. And if you look at that, the area that you're considering annexation for tonight is in tier 3. The previous page, 26, of shaped places describes tier 3 as follows: annexation not advised, City services are projected to be available for development within 16 to 25 years. Again, annexation is not advised. Similarly, the 2013 annexation priorities map shows this area that's under consideration tonight as the Sioux Falls 2035 growth area. It's not in the first wave, the second wave, the third wave, the fourth wave, or even the fifth wave of annexation priorities. And finally, I want to bring your attention to the comprehensive annexation program, the City of Sioux Falls, summer of 2011. Mr. Cooper mentioned that in order to approve this annexation, you have to have an application properly submitted by a property owner. It has to be contiguous, and the infrastructure must be there. He omitted one important part, and that is contained in this program. It must be within Tier 1 or Tier 2. Again, this property is not within Tier 1 or Tier 2. It's within Tier 3. And this is in the city's own comprehensive annexation program that requirement be met. And it has not been met in this case. Finally, I just want to say that this is my first foray into any city council, city planning type activities. And frankly, I don't mean any disrespect to any of you, but I'm very disillusioned by this process. I feel that we've come to this meeting tonight with many of you having your minds made up as to the proposed annexation and the proposed development that would occur on this property should it be annexed. I think that is the wrong way to go about it. I feel that rather than you being decided and coming with your mind already made up, you, as our elected city council members, should have an open mind, be unbiased and undecided. And I think me and a number of others who live in this area feel that you have not done that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Please come forward.
Hello, I'm Bonita Schwan. I'm a resident of Sioux Falls, and my home is at the corner of 85th and Audie, and I would respectfully like to submit this picture for discussion as it relates to the annexation. Before I discuss the photo that is before you, I would like to thank all of the councilwomen and the councilmen for the time that they have taken to come to our neighborhood and discuss this issue at our neighborhood meeting, at our homes, in our emails, and our phone calls. It's been very helpful that you have been listening when we come and ask you to do so. I also would like to thank Councilman Staggers for the amendment that he proposed at the last council meeting so our neighborhood would be correctly represented as a single-family residences. I also would like to thank Mayor Huther for his commitment after this annexation meeting to come and meet at our neighborhood to further discuss this issue with us. I also want to thank Mike Cooper and his staff for all the information that they've provided us, and also the Walmart representatives who've agreed to come and meet with us at our neighborhood. What I just want to briefly discuss with you now is in follow-up to what my neighbor Dana just laid out with you, the specifics of why we do not agree with the annexation that is laid before you. I'm not going to reiterate those points, but I do concur with her comments in that regard. I would like to add one other comment about that before I discuss this photo. I would like to add when the city allowed the additional single-family residences in our neighborhood, what came with that is the city's obligation to our single-family homes. And that is why this photo is so critical to this annexation vote that is before you tonight. This is a photo that is taken out of my garage. And as you will see, that is my driveway. And that is the street sign that is 85th and Audie. Right across from the proposed development main entrance. That is where my driveway is, and if this annexation vote goes through, we then will be looking at a stoplight going in there. We will be looking at a new shape faces sign as high as 30 feet high, advertising for the development that will be going in there. We will be looking at the increased traffic load that will affect our lifestyle, our safety, and the other considerations that were pointed out by Dana in her presentation in opposition to the annexation. So once again, I'm just going to say this, that the city is accountable in allowing our single-family residences, that you are accountable for your actions with this annexation and what will happen to our neighborhood, and specifically my driveway, my home, and the implications of a vote in favor of this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Benita. Welcome.
Good evening, Trent Swanson. Tonight, obviously, what we have in front of us is a petition by the applicant to rezone 39 acres. The proposed zoning as called forth in the application, the petition was for C4, so obviously commercial slab on grade. That is the proposed density of the property. When it asked for the proposed use, proposed density in the application, it was commercial slab on grade. I know Mr. Cooper said that the rezoning will be heard later, but that's what the intended use is at this time. It's what's before the council tonight. In front of you, you've got the staff report. I was able to get a copy of that last Friday afternoon. Emailed some of the council members and Mr. Cooper last night with some of the questions I had. You know, references the sewer comments, and you know, Mike, thank you for referencing that report. I'll want a copy of that. My question was not necessarily with whether the property can be sewered by the proposed existing sewer system, but the potential impact on other properties in the city. My understanding that the sewer system is, you know, approaching capacity. I don't know what that capacity level is, but that's one of the considerations I hope the council would consider and determine whether or not to approve the annexation. The second item in the staff report talks about drainage. Now, I know as Mike Cooper said earlier, there's a traffic study that's going on, so the traffic issues still haven't been fully resolved. But in any event, I'm assuming there's going to be additional water runoff of the streets that are built, and if you're doing an expansion of 85th Street already has significant drainage issues. I've raised that issue before. When you get down to 85th and Grange, the street floods, the intakes for the storm sewer system aren't sufficient to handle the water that's being discharged off those streets. So that's something I would like the City Council to consider and determine whether or not this property is ready for development, which is really the purpose of the annexation to begin with. Obviously in the engineering comments that the staff referenced, they talk about the traffic study. You know, and there's a lot of pending issues that need to be considered before this property, I think, is ready to be developed. Therefore, in light of those, I would also ask the council to consider deferring the annexation decision. Mayor Huther, you mentioned today at the Snowgate discussion how safety, I think, is paramount to the citizens and paramount to when you make these considerations of city council action, how it impacts citizens. And I can tell you, living in the neighborhood, safety and traffic, those are all obviously of critical importance to the citizens in that area. And please take that into consideration. I'm not saying annexation isn't going to be proper at some point in time. It just seems like there's a lot of what-ifs right now. I think it's premature to make the determination tonight. I also had a question on the legal description, and this is just a comment. I don't know. You guys have seen it. It would appear from the map that was shown by Mr. Cooper tonight that the boundaries have changed slightly. Obviously, in the city ordinances, one thing that is required is that a valid legal description be included before you can make the annexation vote. So I don't know if the legal description has been determined yet or not. It looks like it's a to-be platted legal description in the draft resolution that I was presented. Finally, just one last point I want to make to you. I looked at SDCL 945 earlier today, and it talks about if you're going to annex unplatted property or agricultural property, you're required to have the county commission approve that before acting upon the annexation. I don't know if that was anything that's been considered yet or not, if you've looked into that. That's one last thing I just wanted to make a point of. So,
Trent, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good job. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is Ross Wright. In addition to getting a law degree at USD, I got a coaching endorsement in my undergrad days. And I remember from that coaching endorsement for track and field, there's a step called the penultimate step. That's this small step you take before you take a really big leap. And I think that's what we have here tonight. This is the small step of the annexation that I think people envision being very quick and easy prior to taking this big leap. That's, in my mind, going to really shape what the city of Sioux Falls will look like for generations to come. And that's the next decision, which comes tomorrow. The rezoning from C4, or I'm sorry, from Ag to C4. And really, if you step back and you look at how the city of Sioux Falls has grown, and you focus at another arterial street on Minnesota Avenue, 69th in Minnesota, and you compare and you contrast 85th in Minnesota with 69th in Minnesota. To put it in an art term, I think 69th in Minnesota looks a lot like a Rembrandt. There's order, there's smooth transitions, things make sense. And the proposal that's going to be hinging on this annexation, in my mind, looks a lot like a Picasso. We've got 40 acres here, we've got 17 acres here of commercial, 5 or 6 here, 10 or 12 here. Things aren't in balance. And to call your attention to what I have up on the graphic, when the city looks at annexation, one of the things that it talks about in subsection 1 there is annex undeveloped land within the city's planned growth area well in advance of its development. Well, this is in the city's planned growth area, but it's not in advance of the development. As you could see from Benita's picture, development literally is at her door. And I think what people see when they look at a photo like that is they get this sense of manifest destiny. Let's just build, build, baby, build. And they don't take the time to turn around and look at the residences that line that street. And so I'm going to call your attention to the bottom where it says, of utmost importance in the annexation process is the need to sensitively deal with the concerns of affected residences and property owners. By assuming political jurisdiction over an annexed area, the city also assumes responsibility to protect the lifestyle and economic well-being of its residents. Particularly, and I underline that for you, particularly in established residential neighborhoods, which this is, consideration should be given to such things as zoning and street and utility improvements that might adversely affect the character of the area. I'd like to call your attention to SDCL Site 9-19-13. That's important for a couple of reasons. Mr. Fifley commented that there's attorneys in the room. I'm obviously one of those. The nice thing about the law is you can disagree without being disagreeable. I called Dave because I wanted him to know that I saw this statute today. It caught my eye, and I wanted him to know that I was looking at this. He proffered his, reading of the statute. I gave him mine. But as I looked at this more and more, I wanted to bring this to your attention because I think what we're doing tomorrow is violative of the process that we were asked to trust, Mr. Mayor, on Saturday. And I want to thank you again for your time. You stayed an hour and a half longer than you needed to. But your comment stuck with me because I do believe in the process. I think it's there. I think it's there for a reason, and I think if we stick to it, it'll work. But that process calls for 20 days from the adoption of this resolution, which this is, and it's 20 days from the date of publication. And so, in talking to Dave this afternoon, if we publish this resolution, if it is passed tonight, we would have a publication likely on Friday. And then we would have, I'm sorry, I see Lori shaking her head. When would that be?
Saturday.
Saturday, okay. So 20 days from Saturday. Thank you for that. So to essentially take this land, annex it tonight, and then have a hearing tomorrow is violative of that process. That statute right there says so. If you look up in the top right corner, and I'll grab this away from Mike here. There's footnotes here in my code book, and they're too small, I think, even to read, but I'll read what it says. It says, the purpose of the statutes providing for passage and publication of resolutions or ordinances of municipalities subject to right of electors to reject or approve them is to assure timely notice to electors of administrative decisions and determinations of governing bodies, which you folks are, and to assure full and fair opportunity to refer decisions to voters for approval or rejection. As it stands, if this is adopted tonight, this is before the Planning Commission tomorrow. And in talking to Dave and getting his opinion on this, the Planning Commission is simply making a recommendation tomorrow. But I would proffer this. The Planning Commission, like you folks, is an administrative body. And like you folks, they serve a term in office. The only difference is you guys are elected, they're appointed, I presume, by the mayor. Like the city council, they conduct city business. This isn't simply just a, yep, I think this is a good idea and let's talk about it on May 7th. That's not how the process is supposed to work. They have a chair. They have a vice chair. They have an agenda. They're on television, just like this proceeding is tonight. They also have steps. They're required to comply with the public notice proceedings. And so they're a lot like you folks. They're conducting city business for the advancement of city goals. And one of those goals is the comprehensive plan. And in my mind, we need to go slow. I don't think there's a hurry here. This isn't a delay tactic. This is the law. This isn't a suggestion. This is black and white. And that's, in my mind, something that we need to be cognizant of. I thank you for your time, and I'll be available if you have any questions.
Good job, Ross.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Council, Ross went a little bit long, but he was bringing up some unique points, so that's why I let him continue. Folks, anybody else? Very good. Good comments. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for staying on topic, too. We do appreciate that. Council, leave it in your hands now. Comments? Councilor Anderson, Jr.
I have a question for the city attorney.
Thank you.
Excuse me. David, with the gentleman's comments on the reading of the law book there, what is our state and position on that as far as allowing the planning meeting to happen tomorrow before we've even done a vote and have that already scheduled?
If I may, Counselor, what that statute says is that it's the resolution would be effective in law 20 days after publication. I think I said Friday or Saturday. I appreciate Lori for making sure it is Saturday. But what would happen tomorrow is the Planning Commission is only an advisory body. It does not take any final action. So the mere fact that the annexation resolution is passed but it's not yet effective wouldn't affect their work as far as just ruling on whether they should recommend the next step, assuming that no referendum takes place. The 20 days is so that the referendum process can proceed. Since the Planning Commission only meets once per month, that's kind of why those items are put in the chute, so to speak, for the Planning Commission, so they have a chance to weigh on them. But certainly this body that actually takes the action would not be ruling on it until after the citizens would have a chance to invoke the referendum process if they wish to do so.
Thank you.
Councilor Karski.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Cooper, quick question, if I may. Looking at the map and the tiers for annexation, what tier is this? Is it 3 or is it 2?
Okay, that's why I wanted to include this exhibit. In our Shape Sioux Falls Comprehensive Plan, which was adopted in 2009, and that was based again on a generalized drainage and sewer basin study. This was identified as Tier 3 according to when we thought utility services would be available. But as we've done in the past, it's really based on a case-by-case situation where a property owner or developer can show that utility services are available without negatively impacting either other property or causing a burden on the city's capital improvement program. Then we've said, okay, if you can serve it within a year or 2 or less than 5, that's categorized as Tier 1. So as I said at the beginning of this staff report, when this site was originally proposed for annexation, we said, well, it's in Tier 3. So let's do the analysis to see how can sewer be extended to this site. And the engineering report said, yes, the existing sewer system is available to serve this without any other major capital improvements. So that's really the nexus that we use.
Okay, and
the annexation priorities that was mentioned by one of the speakers, that was a plan that we put together where the city staff was going out and initiating the annexations.
And that's what I was wondering, if
That was the
that's a
difference.
forced annexation versus a requested annexation.
Those are the
And
ones that require county commission consideration.
Okay, because I'm reading it just say if Tier 3, then the land is available for annexation in 15 years, but it doesn't say we have to wait 15 years.
Yeah, it's based on the availability of utilities is the key part of that.
Thank you.
Councilor Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor. The question concerning the legal description, do we have any concern?
I don't know that that's a concern. I mean, it's not platted, so it's a described legal description. But if you remember the one we just did earlier tonight, it's pretty much a similar type process.
Thank you.
Councilor Enneman.
Mike, what about the contention that, yes, it's served by sewer, but it's not adequate and it's going to overload or burden the system, the sanitary sewer?
Okay, I'll go back and quote the report that I did earlier tonight.
Please.
And again, I can make this available to anybody who wants it. But the cover letter says that based on the review of this proposed commercial development of 40 acres, which was required as part of the annexation process, the review indicates that the additional flow that would be generated from this property and this development will not surcharge or overflow the city's sanitary sewer system.
Thank you.
Councilor Enneman.
Can you address a little bit the traffic study? Can you just tell us a little bit about if there's one undergoing? What is 85th and Minnesota Avenue? Can you explain how you classify those roads already?
Well, again, the annexation process does not get into the traffic study, but there is one currently being put together at the request of the city in order to look at what impacts a 40-acre commercial development would have. And what we've said to the different neighborhood groups, that will not be available till tomorrow night, but it will be available prior to any final city council action on the rezoning.
Okay. Might have one more. Can you tell us, how do you classify major arterial or whatever, like 85th Street, Minnesota Avenue? Can you tell us how you classify those roads, those streets?
Classified based primarily on the access. Okay. If it's quarter-mile, half-mile access.
Okay.
In this case, you have 85th Street, which is an arterial street that would typically have half-mile full access. Sometimes you can get quarter-mile right in, right out. And then Minnesota Avenue, same type of situation. And then on the south side is the proposed future South Dakota 100 alignment.
Thank you.
Councilor Anderson, Jr.
I'll
Defer? Very
defer
good.
Councilman Edelman ask my questions.
Thank you so much, Councilor. Councilor Jameson.
If I could, Mike, the process of annexing the land into the city, if it's annexed in and zoned ag, but the zoning process fails, what is there, just remind me, is there any new liability or responsibility to the landowner having been annexed in versus?
It would still be zoned agricultural.
Yep.
So it could only be used for agricultural purposes.
But with their taxes, what would anything?
The taxes would still be based on, if you remember, we have an option called the Rural Service District designation, which allows them to be taxed at the
Stay the same?
Yes, stay the same.
And then one other question on the issue of allowing the single-family home to be built at that corner of 85th and Audie. I've heard it from a lot of people in different ways. They built there, they should have realized what was coming. But I also feel that the speaker was correct in that the council holds, or that the city holds, some responsibility when allowing a home to be built in a corner like that. I'm sure we're not just leaving them out to dry. We've somehow planned and thought about how we would protect that.
I've had one meeting at that house, and I'm sure I'll have at least one or two more. When that property was originally annexed and zoned by the developer, it was RD zoning under the old zoning ordinance. RD allows single-family, twin home, up to 4 plexes by conditional use. So it gave the developer a lot of different options. With the new shaped places, we're trying to eliminate that by being more specific on what the zoning will be or not be for residential purposes. So like many, many other residential development areas around the city, the developer said, I want the flexibility to have either single-family, twin home, or even a conditional use permit for 4 plexes. And that's the way that area was approved.
Councilor Staggers.
Yes, Mike, could you clarify something for me? All the land that's west of those 3 houses on Aldi, is that developable land or not?
Is it developable?
Yes.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
I think if I could, I think Councilor Staggers is pointing to the BMP.
To the west, Mike.
To the west of to the west.
The BMP behind
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's
You
a
have the aerial
the,
BMP?
photo?
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. I thought you meant on the west side of Audi Avenue.
You're
have the
east
aerial
side,
photo?
you were thinking east side.
Yes. No,
Okay, that's a BMP.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I misunderstood your
okay.
question.
Thank you.
I hope Colonel.
Councilor Jameson, good job there. Thank you.
Okay.
You can read my mind easily, huh?
I drove by the other day too. I don't think you could put a home on there, no.
Not advised.
I want to double check.
Council, very good questions. Thank you. And Councilor Jameson, thank you for that question about the annexation, and that was good for me too. Well, we've had really good testimony on behalf of the Dana, Benita, Trent, and Ross. Mike, thanks for your report as well. Council, I think you've asked some really good questions. It is the process. And now let's see what the council thinks. Would anybody want to make a motion to at least make a decision one way or the other on this?
Move to approve, Karski.
Second, Rolfing.
Councilor Karski's made a motion to approve this item, seconded by Councilor Rolfing. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Jameson.
Right, I think this is the first step into a long-term process, and I think we are going through it, but the Tier 1, Tier 2 process was a little concerning that the solution was that as long as you could prove that it works, you're fine. There's some disillusion that the homeowners probably have that felt that, well, this probably isn't going to be annexed in any time soon. I don't know if it's defined or disclaimered in there that if it's been proved that it's okay, that it can be annexed in. If it's not, I think we sure need to add that into the discussion so that those homeowners in future areas aren't disillusioned about what's going to be built near them and what kind of a timeline that's going to be. I just feel bad that we're. I heard that from the neighbors that they were concerned about the timing. Surely they all knew something was going to happen here, but they weren't prepared for the timing. And so I agree that commercial development needs to occur on that corner for sure. We just need to do it in a managed way. And this is the first step to getting there, and I guess we have to go through some pain to get there. But that's my biggest concern, is just clarity in the comprehensive plan to make sure that it is there. That's all.
Very good. Before the council votes, I just wanted to make a point. Really appreciate how the folks stayed on topic with annexation. You didn't have to do that. Well, actually, you did. And you respected the process. Dana, we talked about the process, and I really appreciate how you respected the process. It was wonderful. And council, you did the same. Thank you. With that, let's have a vote. There's been a motion and it has been seconded. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson,
Yes.
Entenmann,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Karski,
Yes.
Rolfing,
Yes.
Staggers,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 37.
Report of the March 26, 2013 Notice of Transfers of Appropriations within Major Organizational Units.
Very good. Do we need to vote on that?
Oh, do we?
No.
No.
Thank you.
Okay.
Council, that ends our meeting unless there's some new business.
Move to adjourn, Erpenbach.
Second, Entenmann.
Councilor Erpenbach's made a motion to adjourn, seconded by Councilor Entenmann. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned, Sioux Falls. Thank you so much. Make it a great evening.